Hey guys, I'm April from Giggle Glitter Graphics, and today I'm doing a quick flip through plus assembly of my newest box kit, Brightwand Academy. There are 8 projects in this kit, including the box, and each project explores a different part of a magical school. I'm going to give you a quick flip through of each project included in Brightwand Academy, and then I'll move on to what supplies you need, tips and tricks, and then assembly. This is a very long video, so keep in mind that you can use timestamps to jump to exactly the portion you need at any time. So first I'd like to start with the box. I love this box. I love how the inside of it came out. It's a little bit of a student supply box. There is lots of ivy and wood and natural materials for this academy. We've got this really cool kind of manor estate is the main building on campus. And then inside of the lid, we do have a map of the campus. And there is an annotated version of this later on in the orientation package. So you'll get to find out what each of these buildings are. But this is the box. This is the first project. The second project is the orientation packet. So we're new students, so we're going to need to know what is up. So this is just going to pop open, and there are some little goodies in here. There is a school supply list for first years. We've got a letter from the headmistress. And then a few other things you're going to need. We do have the Brightwand Academy Code of Conduct, a first year class schedule, and then our annotated map so that you can explore the campus yourself and figure out where all of the buildings and classes are. For our orientation, we also get a brief Brightwand Academy history and overview. This little scroll is going to roll out. There we go. So here is the backside, decorative backside, and then there's a little bit of a history about the academy that you can read if you want to. Next, we're going to meet some of the staff. We have the Brightwand staff compendium, and I have added some ties to mine. That's an optional little detail, little book front and back. And when you open it up, you have an option to pick portraits for all of the staff. We have the headmistress, and then we have professors for our 4 main classes. And I have 4 sheets of portraits, 9 on a page for you to choose from. So you should be able to really personalize this and make your staff look exactly how you want. And a school wouldn't be a school without students. So we have a student registry, and just like the staff compendium, I've provided a bunch of portraits for you to pick from. So this is featuring 2 students from each class year. We've got first, second, third, and fourth year students. And you, again, get to decide who those students are, what they look like in this cute little book. There is the backside with the school logo. And then the first class we're going to go to is Herbalism Class. This is a huge folio. I might have gotten carried away on this one, but I have no regrets. So there's a flip up with a pocket. I am not going to pull every little piece out. I do want you to be able to explore this as you build. So here's a little bit about the class. That will slide back down in there. Here's the back side. We've got a pocket with some goodies. And then this opens up and we're going to explore the school gardens. There is some little file folders and tucks and bookmarks and flippy things. And it all comes down to this little potion cabinet, which I thought was super cute. So this is a really fun little folio. And I love how that came out. Our next class is astrology and astronomy. Those 2 things go hand in hand in my school. And this folio doubles as a box. This is going to open up for a deck of 12 constellation cards. And these are all imaginary constellations, but there are 12 unique cards that go inside of here. And then you have little bits and bobs through the folio to explore, and then the whole thing folds back up to contain our cards again. And there is the back side with the tower that the class is in. Next, we're going to go to Wandmaking Class. I had a lot of fun with this one. This box pops up into a little work desk for Wandmaking Class. And then the drawer comes out and we have lots of little goodies inside. There is a class assignment scroll, a little book that tells you about wand making. And I had a little note tucked inside of there. We've got some assignment sheets from our students, little sketches, a box of special wand binding twines that is part of the wand making process. And this is a little, I'm gonna keep it a little bit of a secret, but there's some little bobbins in there. So there's some twine samples and then a tray. Again, when you learn about the process, the tray will make a little more sense, but I've got some little wands in there, plus a tray with a reversible insert. And everything fits right down inside of this little drawer, goes right back in here. And I've used a Velcro dot to close this, but I have also included a little tuck strap. So if you don't have a Velcro dot, you can seal this up with just the strap. Finally, we have Spellcasting 101. So this is a fun little folio, again, with some flips and flops that go over different aspects of the class, some pictures of the classroom areas, and a description of what those look like and the purpose of everything. So that is everything. Oh, here's the back side. That is everything that is included in the Brightwand Academy box kit. Now let's go over some supplies and tips and tricks for this kit. Everything is going to be printed on either 110-pound cardstock or 32 pounds paper. I will have a supply list linked in the description down below if you want to see exactly what all of these products are, including the papers that I use. So you can check that out if you want to. But 110-pound cardstock, 32-pound paper, which is a little thicker than your regular copy paper, but it is worth it and the colors come out really nice. So trust me on that one. When you go to print everything, you'll see at the top, I have what the kit is, some of my contact information, if you need to print on cardstock or paper, and then what project it's from. This is from the students book. So everything that says students on top go together into one kit. The files are also named that way, but if you're using a PDF, then this will be your indicator, and all of the images in the PDF will be grouped together by project. So the files will be named by project and the PDF will be sectioned by project. So here is another example. This one says it should be printed on paper. This is from the orientation packet. And then the additional information you might have on a page is if a backer paper needs to be printed on the reverse. So this is an envelope and the inside of it will be printed. So you'll need to print orientation backer paper on the back side, and that will also be labeled. The file will say orientation backer paper, or it will be the backer paper that is lumped together in the PDF with the other orientation. It'll be the last part. And it will also visually match the backer paper that I show you in the instructions. So just look for that visual cue when you get to the project. I go through all of the pages, what they're printed on really quickly, and what needs the backside printed and what that looks like for each project. So I am step by step with you through the whole thing. So just look for those notes though, cardstock or paper, what project it's for, and then if it needs a backer paper on the reverse. Some other supplies that you will need are scissors and an optional paper trimmer. I do provide PNG files for those of you who use cutting machines. I cut on my brother's Scan and Cut. That prints and cuts at full-size pages. If you are using a Cricut, the built-in Cricut print and cut will size everything small and can sometimes throw all your sizes around. So unless you're familiar with that workaround to do a full-size print and then cut that on your Cricut, I do not really recommend doing the Cricut print and cut with this project. A Brother and Scan and Cut works great. The Cricut workaround where you can print and cut for the full page, there are lots of videos on YouTube for that. I gave up on that a long time ago and got the Brother machine, but cutting machines, print and cut full size, otherwise scissors and an optional paper trimmer to cut everything out. For glue, you will need a liquid glue with a fine point. I like Beacon Fabri-Tac, And you can also use a glue stick. You'll see me use Fabri-Tac almost exclusively because it dries quickly for me and it works really well for videos. There are times a glue stick would work better. I try to note when those times are, but use the glue that you like. And then for the glue stick, I do like Uhu as my glue stick. You will need a bookbinding kit or the equivalent, so you'll need something to punch holes with, a needle with a large eye, and some kind of bookbinding thread. This is waxed bookbinding thread. You can also use embroidery floss if necessary. Get creative with it if you don't have these tools. A bookbinding kit will also come with a bone folder, which makes it easier to get sharp creases. You can use your thumbnail or the back of your scissors, but a bookbinding kit is a good investment if you're going to be doing a lot of projects like this. You're also going to want to have some various strings and twines. So this is one of the spools I kind of hid from you in the wand making kit. I had a little fun with this. I did do a couple colors of embroidery floss. You can use specialty yarns, anything you have on hand. I left lots of room in that little box. So these can get quite fluffy if you want. I also use some special kind of threads on the tie for my staff compendium. So again, that is optional and I'll show you how to attach those, but something for this project would be nice as well. A corner rounding punch is a nice but not necessary tool. It can help you with some, if you're cutting by hand, it'll help you with a few of the rounded corners in the kit, maybe make those easier. Mostly I used this on those zodiac cards. I used it on the medium setting, and that was just to make them a nice rounded card. It was totally superficial and not necessary. But if you have one or you've been meaning to get one, that will work well for that particular project. Distress ink is optional, but highly recommended. I feel like it gives a much more finished look to the projects. I use vintage photo on most of the things, but I did use a little bundled sage. I like that extra green. There's a lot of ivy going on with the papers and everything like that. So the green and brown I thought looked really nice together because the kit is green and brown. So I've got bundled sage, distress oxide, and vintage photo distress ink. And then the last optional item is a scoreboard. There's so much folding and a scoreboard makes that a lot easier. You don't have to have it. You can do all these folds by hand, but being able to do the creases on here first definitely makes it easier. So I know that was a lot to take in, so many supplies, but I think we are now ready to get started on the first project, which is the box. So let's start with the box. That way we have something to hold all of our other projects. There are 11 pages to construct the box, and they're all going to be printed on 110-pound cardstock. They're all going to be blank on the reverse side. There is no backer paper for these, so you don't have to worry about that. And each page is marked as to whether it is for the top of the box or the bottom. The top of the box has Brightwand Academy, the map, and then these star panels. And then the bottom of the box has this box bottom with a bunch of goodies in it, this piece with the logo on it, and then all of the ivy and star pieces. I've put vintage photo distress ink on all of my edges, and I have also, let me flip this over, put it on the reverse side along any crease that has a tab attached to it. So a tab would be anything with angled sides. So these little guys here, and then the larger pieces, they'll have a little bit of print, they'll have some text on them, and they'll have angled sides as well. So I put extra distress ink along there. That way when the box is put together, if this little bit of white would show through, it's covered up with ink. So that's optional, but it's a nice step to make your box look just a little more finished. So if you want to do that, you can. I did ink all of my other creases so you can see them better on camera. So you do not have to do these plain ones here against these more square sides. I just did that so that you can see things much better on camera because I've noticed that folds aren't showing up very well. So I'm trying to highlight all those for you from now on. So we're going to start with the bottom. And I have labeled, there's not really a right or wrong on these sides. Let me start off by saying that, but I have labeled them for you. So box bottom, short side, bottom side. So that would mean it goes towards you. It is the bottom part of the box. And then short panel, top side, it would go up here. Long side panel, right side, it would go over here. And long side panel, left side over here. And that is just to break it down for you to make it much easier to figure out where everything is going to go. We're also going to start with the inside bottom of the box. We're going to take this outside bottom and put it to the side for now. but I'm going to grab this inside bottom of the box. That's what we're going to attach all 4 sides to. So let's talk about creases really quickly. On the sides, you're going to have a crease right in between these star and ivy textures, and then a crease between the ivy and this wood grain here. You do not crease between the wood grain and the white. The wood grain is just there so when the bottom of the box goes on, you don't have any blank white space here. It's just going to fill it in. Grab the box bottom. When this lays on top, it's just a little something to finish it off, just in case your cut is a little smaller. So fold here, that's for both long sides, and then for the short sides, same thing between the stars and the ivy, between the wood and the ivy, and then you're going to have these 2 additional little tabs that also get folded in. And again, ink on those 3. There's 3 tabs on the short sides, and extra ink just along here. There's the print, extra ink here if you're doing that. So I've got all of my pieces in place. I've got my bottom. And I'm going to start with the short sides. I'm going to grab my glue. You can use a glue stick. I'm using my Fabri-Tac because I prefer it. And I'm going to glue the squared off side, the star side, to the ivy panel. So I'm going to put a layer of glue, and I'm doing this for both short sides. I'm just going to put a layer of glue on here and press that down. And then I'm going to use my bone folder. You can use a ruler or another object or just your hand. And I'm going to smush that down really good. And then repeat that for the short top side. We are only gluing on the rectangular panel, not on the tabs at this point. So a good coating of glue, and then I'm just going to fold that star panel over. I'm going to fold that, make sure everything is able to stand up at a 90-degree angle. And let's bring that inside bottom back. Now let's go ahead and attach these 2 sides. We're going to want to glue this large tab to the white side of the inside bottom of the box. So this will glue right on here, and then we're going to line it up left and right and give it a fold. So here's my glue. I'll get in camera just a little more for you. And I'm just putting a good amount of glue on this tab. And then grabbing the box bottom rather, and I'm just lining that up left and right so that everything is in a straight line here. I'm going to push this in as tight as I can, and then I'm going to fold this all the way over and press. And you can see you get just a little bit peeking out. When it's up at a right angle, you don't see it as much. If you open it up, you can see how much space is there. That is correct. So if it's flat and it looks like that, your spacing is good. Let's repeat that for the bottom. So we're just going to put our glue right on the tab. And then you probably need to turn this around to line that up. There we go. So line that up left and right, and then fold over and press. Now I'm going to turn this back. If you get confused, you can flip this over, top, bottom. Again, there's not really a right or wrong with this, but sometimes our brains like directions, very specific directions. So I went ahead and included those. So left-hand side, we are going to glue the tab first. We are not going to glue this piece yet because we need to insert these tabs into it. So I'm going to turn here so it's easier for you to see. Glue goes on the big tab. Same thing, we're going to place the bottom on it. We're going to line that up left and right. And then I'm going to fold this over. I'm going to leave it open and fold it over. And then you can always double check that, move everything if you need to. Now I'm going to repeat that for the other side. So that right side, I'm going to glue my tab in. Same thing. There we go. Insert that right underneath the panel. Line it up left and right. And then fold over. If you don't do this fold over, sometimes this doesn't want to tuck in like it should later on. So, and that is the next step. So if you have trouble getting that to tuck in nice and neat, there's a little way we can fix that. But if you do this crease, this full fold over crease, then you're going to have an easier time of getting that to lay flat later on. All right. So now let's start. I'm going to start with the left side. Both sides are identical. It doesn't matter which one you do. I'm going to stand up my right sides briefly. I'm going to fold in my little tabs so they're at a right angle, like so. Then I'm going to glue all over this bottom section of the long side. Give that a good amount of glue. And then up the sides, these short little sides of the top panel on the long side, because we want glue on both sides of those tabs. Then I'm going to stand up my short sides, stand up my long side, and then fold this flap down inside the box. Now, before you press this, before you squeeze everything together, you can give it a little press in the middle, but you need to stand it up and check these corners. You want them to be loose enough that you can push it in, make a nice tight right corner, then squeeze where the tab is. Do that for both sides. Press that corner in, get it nice and tight, and squeeze. Once you have your corners tight, then you can go along the whole thing. And then I like to stand it up and grab my bone folder and really press that. Now, if you get a little bit of buckling along this crease, press in down here all along, and then just kind of press out. And that is going to kind of shift your crease a little bit so that you don't end up with some kind of weird thing happening on there. So same thing on the other side. Glue on the bottom long panel. Glue along the ends, the short ends of that top panel. Make sure your tabs are in at a 90-degree angle. And then stand this up, flip it over into the box, touch it in the middle, stand up, and check those corners. Make sure they're pressed in nice and tight, and give it a squeeze. And then I'm going to lay it down and give that a good press with my bone folder, or your ruler, or your fingers, whatever you have on hand. And now we've got the box assembled, and we just need to cover up all this funky stuff on the back, and that is where this panel comes in. This can go either way. It's up to you. I think I'm going to put mine on this way. And we're just going to glue it down. You want to make sure that the glue goes all the way to the edges, because this is on the outside of the box. And this could potentially catch. So this is a good place for a glue stick, even if you just use it around the outside edge, and then maybe scribble some liquid glue in the middle, or use glue stick on the whole thing, whatever your preference. I like the liquid glue because it's fast for videos and I can slide things around a little bit. And I always say, do as I say, not as I do, because I can always glue my sides a little better. So once you get your glue on, just plop that on, and then make sure it's lined up and it's not hanging over anywhere. And then I'm going to turn this over and press that from the inside. So there's the bottom of our box. And we can put this off to the side for now. So now we're going to repeat that same process for the top of the box. It's the same thing, but skinnier. So again, they're labeled top, bottom, left, and right. So we'll lay those out. We're going to put the Brightwand Academy panel. This is our outside panel. We're going to put that to the side, and we're going to grab the map. The map can go either way. I am inclined to put it this way. So this is the direction I'm going to place it. And we're going to start with those short sides, tabs in, and we're going to glue the star pattern. We're just going to fold that over and glue it to itself. So there is that one. And then the same thing on this one. We're going to fold that down. Green on the inside and gold on the outside. Just glue that to itself. And then I'll use my bone folder and give both of those a nice sharp crease and smush all that glue out. Now we're going to put these back where they belong. And we're going to start attaching that inside panel. So this is my top edge. Glue on that tab. And then just line that up left and right. And fold over and give that a nice rub. Then we're going to attach the bottom. I'm going to turn mine so it's a little easier for me to do. Right on that tab. Line it up, left and right. Now I'll turn that back. I've got my left and right long sides. So let's make sure you've got your angled tab and not the wrong side. Make sure you're gluing this piece here with the text. So I'm just going to scribble my glue on there. Tuck that right underneath my panel. Line up left and right. Give that a fold and a press. And then I'm going to turn this and attach that last one. Nice scribble of glue. And tuck that underneath. And then fold over. And give that a crease. And now we are ready to start tucking those tabs in. So 90-degree angle on those little tabs. Good coating of glue on the bottom panel of the long side. There we go. And then a little glue on either end. Stand it up. Make sure everything is tucking in there. Fold over, press in that center, stand it up and check your corners. And then smush it all down. And then do that one more time for the other side. There we go. A little bit of glue either end and up and over. And I'm going to press that in the middle, check my corners. And then firm that all up with my bone folder. So there is, I've got the map of the Academy grounds inside. Flip that over. So make sure this is the direction that you want it, and then just flip it. So the top is still the top, and you can even see it peeking out there, top. And then this panel is going to glue right on the top. So again, this is the outside of your box. So make sure you glue to all of the corners really well. There we go. And then I'm just going to do a quick scribble in the middle. Make sure that you get plenty of glue on this. The glue is definitely going to help also add stability to your box, so make sure that it's on there well. Every little extra time that you take, every little detail that you take is going to make everything a lot more sturdy. And from the back side, there we go. And there is the lid of the box. And then moment of truth. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a squish the first time to get it on. Mine went on pretty well. And there we go. There is the Brightwand Academy box. Since we're new to our school, we are going to need a little orientation packet. So we're making a first year student orientation materials envelope for our Brightwand Academy students. And this has 8 pages and then a couple of backer papers. 4 of the pages will be on cardstock. That's going to be your larger envelope and a lot of these smaller cards and these pockets as well. And then you have 4 pages that are going to be on paper, and that's going to be the letters and this smaller envelope. For printing on the reverse side, there is a special paper to go on the back of the Brightwand Academy History and Overview. That's going to be the history backer. So you can see what that looks. It's a little extra special because we're going to roll this up. And then the back of the large envelope is going to have this print on it, as well as the small envelope. So these are both going to be printed with the provided backer paper. So let's go ahead and start on our main large envelope. I'll slide all of this out of the way. And we have this big envelope. It's got 3 little tabs that we're going to fold into the other side. So left, right, and bottom are all going to fold, and this is going to form a pocket. We have 2 different pockets. We have this one with a smaller version of our inside print, as well as this one that has 3 tabs. So you're going to need to fold those 3 tabs in like so. So we're going to start with this slightly larger pocket, and it's going to glue right on top of the tabs that are on our main envelope here. So I'm going to grab my glue. I'm using my liquid glue, and I'm just going to put a good coating on each of these tabs. And I like to fold in the left and right tabs first and then fold in the bottom. So just give that a little push and stick it into the glue on each of those tabs, and then come back and place glue along the bottom. And I want to make sure this gets all the way up to the edges because this is going to be the edge of the envelope, and I want to make sure it's not going to get caught later on. And then I'll just pop that right on top of the tabs and then line it up. Give it a little tap, line up the bottom, check the sides. So you're going to have this little pocket that you can put things down inside. And now I'm going to grab my smaller pocket, push those tabs in, and apply glue in the same way. So left and right tabs. And then the bottom tab, I'll go ahead and push that into the glue and then glue that bottom tab. Then I'm going to go ahead and place that right on top. Now, if you haven't already, you're going to need to fold this flap over. I kind of skipped that. I was so excited to start building this envelope. So make sure that this is folded over. There is a line right here that you can fold on. And let's add some embellishments to the outside. So we have this larger label and then a decorative label that it can go on top of, as well as this smaller strip. I'm going to open this up and flip it this way. And we're going to layer these 2 centered up right on the front. I wanted it to feel kind of thick and luxurious and magical. So I wanted to have some layers. And also this gives you room to do something out of the box if you want. You can turn these into pockets. You can turn them into a tuck, whatever you want, a band. These have some options for you if you want to get a little creative. I'm just going to center mine up. And then repeat that for the second label. Like so. Just centered right on top of the first one. I'm going to flip this back over and close my envelope. And this strip here is going to serve as a closure. So we're actually just going to glue the left and right sides and leave the center unglued so we can tuck that little tab down inside of it to keep this envelope closed. So I'm going to grab and kind of mark the middle with my thumb. And I'm going to glue probably a good 1.5 inches on either side. Just make sure you don't over glue and then not have any room for your tab to slide in. But if you under glue, it's going to be a little loose. So not too much, not too little. The Goldilocks amount of glue. And I'm just going to press that down, make sure it's centered up. And then it looks like I need a little more glue. So I'm just going to kind of smush my glue towards my tab a bit. And if you do over glue, you can always put your scissors or your bone folder right under here and loosen it up a bit. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm actually going to just kind of pop this out of here and then make sure it's nice and flat and let that dry before putting it back inside. Now I'm going to put this to the side completely, and let's grab our smaller envelope. So this one has 3 places to fold, here, here, and then on the left and right. So I'm going to fold those little tabs over, fold the bottom up, and we're going to glue the bottom to those 2 side tabs. Just going to get some glue on each of those. Be careful not to glue your envelope shut by putting too much glue on. And then that is just going to fold into place. I'm going to put this to the side as well and let it dry. And let's grab this little cardstock piece. This piece is going to be a band for a scroll. So we're going to need to curl it around and glue it to itself. Now, the easiest way to do that is actually take it to the edge of your table, and it's going to be a little off camera here, and kind of pull it down over the edge of your table like so that you start to get this kind of curl going. And I'm going to do that a couple of times. So now I'm starting to curve a little bit. I'm just going to kind of finish that. And you can see there is a line here. So we've got Brightwand Academy, History and Overview. And there's a line here, and we're going to glue right on this tab. Just going to put a good layer of glue here. And I'm going to smush it out with my finger a bit because I want this to grab pretty quickly. Trying to keep this rolled up is a little tedious. So I've got my layer of glue, and then I'm going to bring this around and stick it to itself, lining it up with my line. So I'm just going to kind of slide that into place so that I have a tube that looks like this. And that has grabbed pretty well. A glue stick might work well here, but there's my little tube, and I'm going to let this dry and go back to my main envelope. So here's my nice big envelope, and let's go ahead and start putting some things inside of here. So we have the Brightwand Academy map. It's going to go into this back pocket. Now, if you have glued something shut, you can put your bone folder or a ruler down inside of there and get that loosened up again. But the map is going to go in. Then we have the first year class schedule. I'm going to pop that inside. I'm going to get my code of conduct. I'm going to fold that in half and put that down inside as well. So now we have 3 things in that back pocket. There we go. Got my first year supply list. I'm going to put that sideways in this smaller pocket so that that's easier to grab. And then let's go ahead and go back to our small envelope. There is a letter We're going to put this letter inside the envelope. It's from the headmistress of the school. And we're going to fold this so that it fits inside. So I like to just kind of lay my letter next to my envelope. And I use that as a guide to fold. So I'm just going to kind of fold this up. And I want to make sure it's going to fit well inside of my envelope. So I have a little more room. And I'm folding this with the text on the outside, mostly because I didn't print the back. If you've printed the back of yours, you might like the back to be out, but I'm going to leave mine with the back side in. There we go. So I've got my folded letter. You can add some ink to this if you want, if you like a grungy look. And I'm just going to pop that right down inside and add this to the front pocket. And then I'm going to seal it up. And that is ready to go into my box. Now let's go back to our scroll. I have my tube here. And I'm going to roll up. So I'm going to turn this, and you can roll it either way, text out or text in. I'm actually going to roll it from the top. And you just have to roll it just smaller than your tube. So I'm going to roll this up. And then slide this down inside. Neaten it up just a little bit. And now I have my Brightwand Academy history and overview all rolled up. And I rolled it that way so that those little book pieces would show. So there we go. We've got our history scroll and our orientation packet all ready to go into the box. Now it's time to meet our school staff. And to do that, we are going to build the Brightwand Staff Compendium. There are 9 pages for this project. 4 of those are the portrait cards. I've provided a ton of different images for you to choose from so you can decide what the staff of Brightwand Academy look like. So I've cut out 3 of my sheets. Here is what this looks like. These all come like this, 9 to a page. So I tried to make sure you had plenty of options for who you want to staff Brightwand Academy. I'm going to put these to the side for now, and we'll use these after we build our book. To build the book, you do need to get a few special supplies. You're going to need some bookbinding thread or some string or embroidery floss or something like that. You're going to need an object to poke some holes. And you're also going to need a needle with a large eye, something big enough to accommodate your thread. And that's how we're going to build our book. If you have done one of these with me before, this is going to look very familiar. But for anybody new, I'm going to go ahead and go through that process. I also have some strings. I'm going to attach these to tie my book shut. This is optional. You don't have to use string. I just had this pretty little golden cord and thought that would look nice as a tie. I'm going to insert mine into the cover, but you can wrap something around it or go without, and you can always sit something on top of the book if it wants to pop open inside of the box. So as I said, there are 9 pages, and some are on cardstock, some are on paper. There are 3 pages with these on them. Let me open this up. So there are 3 that look like this. Those are on paper, and I used my 32-pound paper, which is nice and thick. And then the rest of these I printed on cardstock. You do have the option to print these portraits on paper or cardstock. That's really up to you. And that's more what you think you might do with the leftovers. So think about that. For this project, the material actually doesn't matter. So pick what works best for you for what you might like to do with the leftovers. So we're going to start out by building the cover. I'm going to push everything else off to the side here. And this has a bunch of tabs all around the edge. So you are going to have to fold all of these over, and I recommend getting these corners as tight as possible. Now I did use vintage photo distress ink on this. I think I used it on all of the pieces. I did use a little bit of bundled sage around the outside on this. That was just my creative choice. You can use vintage photo on everything, or you can use an ink of your choice. So flipping this over, vintage photo in the corners so that if my corner isn't tight, white does not show through, and then fold all of these tabs over. I have used a scoreboard on this center spine, but I haven't really folded it yet. So it'll be a little easier to work with for now. And then I will fold that a little later. So all of these tabs, you got 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, 1 on the left, 1 on the right. Give those a fold. And then I'm going to grab my glue and I'm just going to run some glue under all of these tabs and get them pressed down. So just scribble some all the way around. And then I'm going to work my way around here and press these down. Sometimes they want to pop up after you push them down the first time. At least with the Fabri-Tac, I've noticed it wants to do that. So I just go back around and push them down again until they do what I want. And then I'm going to grab my bone folder and I'm going to make sure everything is down nice and tight. Get all those creases, all those corners nice and tight. All right, so let's find the right side up and then flip that over so that our graphics aren't upside down by accident. Let's flip that back. And we're going to need to prepare the pages so that we can insert them into the book. So these are our pages, and they look like this. And I've done 2 of them already, and I'm going to go through that process with the third one. So first thing we're going to do is fold that in half for the tall direction, if that makes sense. So you'll have something that looks like this. There are 3 dots. Those 3 dots are going to go on the inside. So they will be on one side, and then there's no dots on the other side, just text. So fold it this way, and then find those 3 dots. Those go on the inside, fold it this way, so that we're making a little book page, like so. You're going to want to firm those creases up really well, and then open it back up, and we're going to glue the back sides together. So I'm just going to use my Fabri-Tac. You might like a glue stick. You'll want to make sure the edges are glued together really well so that your pages don't catch. So I want to around the edge and then give them a scribble on the inside. Again, take a little time with this or use a glue stick. That'll get you some really good coverage. And then I'm going to smooth this down and then refold so that those 3 dots are in the middle. Once you've completed that for all 3 pages, so again, 3 dots are on the inside and here on the inside, and you can see I've used vintage photo distress ink around all those edges. We're going to go ahead and grab our little pokey tool, our 3 pages, and this little spine piece. And I'm going to use some cardboard. I like to have something to poke down into. And all we're going to do is go and poke all of these holes. So I have pre-done the 2. Here is my 3rd one. I'm just going to punch a hole right down through. And then repeat that for this spine. So you've got 3 sets of 3 holes. So 3 here, 3 in the middle, 3 at the bottom. Punch all of those out. And now comes the fun part. So we're going to attach these pages onto this spine piece, but we need to make sure they're in the right order. So make sure, again, folded with those holes, those printed holes on the inside. And you'll notice that 2 of these actually have numbers on them. So 1 is the first page in our book, and that's going to go to the left. 2, second page in the book, that attaches to the middle. And then the last one does not have a number on it. There was nowhere to place a number, but it's number 3. So the one with Professor Villister, that is our 3rd. So make sure that you've got these in the correct order. 1 with Professor Wexley, 2 with Professor Quenrick, and then 3 will have Professor Villister. That is your order. I recommend stacking them up. Now, if you're going to work the other way, if you're a lefty and you like to work the other way, then adjust this order as necessary. You might flip it this way. I'm going to work 1, 2, and 3. So page 1. I'm going to take page 1. I'm going to get my string. I like to measure 3 lengths, 1, 2, 3, whatever the height of my pages are, with my string, give that a snip. And then I'm going to grab my needle and thread that. And you can decide if you want to start here and have dangly strings on the inside of your book. So maybe you can hang some charms or something off of that, or if you want it to be nice and neat, which is what I'm doing today. I'm going to start on the back side of this template. I'm going to do the leftmost middle hole from the back and go up through it. Now this doesn't really have an up or a down, so don't worry about which direction this is. Middle hole all the way to the left, pull up through and leave enough tail so that you can tie a knot. Then come to your page, verify it has a 1 on the back, go up through the middle hole on that page. And then pull these tight together. Now I'm going to go back down through the top hole of my page, top hole on the leftmost set of holes. So right back through, you can see right there. Back through, and then from the back, make sure you don't lose your tail, all the way down to the bottom, through that bottom leftmost hole, come up through the bottom hole on the page, and then you want to go back down through this middle. When you go back down through the middle, pull this tail out of the way. So pull it to the side, because you don't want to go through your thread by accident and then through the hole all the way to the back. Once you're in the back, lift this string, put a little arm on either side of that center string, pull it tight, and tie a knot. So that's a basic 3-hole punch book binding technique. And then I'm going to trim my strings so that they fall right about here, because I'm going to tape these down. Once you've done that for the first page, I want you to repeat that for page 2. Is going to attach to that middle set of holes, same technique. And then page 3 is going to connect to that rightmost set of holes. So go ahead and attach all of your pages now. All right, so I have all of my pages in, and I have something that looks like this on my little spine piece. And I missed this step just a little bit, but if you haven't already, you're going to fold this along these couple of lines, and that might be a little difficult. Hopefully I put a pop-up in the video earlier, but make sure you fold this along these lines. If you have to, you can fold it to the back. It's not a big deal, but there are a couple lines along there to fold so that you have this little spine shape. And then I'm going to turn this to the back and open it up, and I want to tape these down. I'm just using some washi tape. It doesn't have to be any kind of permanent tape. You can use Scotch tape, whatever you have on hand. And I just don't want these strings all flying everywhere while I'm trying to do things. So I'll tape these down and make my little spine shape. I've got my book. I'm double checking before I glue this in, because once it's glued in, page 1, page 2, and then the third one. So it starts with the introduction and the headmistress, and then goes from there. So let's go back to our cover. And now that this is dry, I am going to fold this along the spine lines. So there are lines on either side, Brightwand Staff Compendium. And I'm going to make sure that this is nice and straight, nice and square. And I'm going to fold both of those. Give that a crease. And then I'm going to test the fit and make sure that this piece nestles right inside of this piece. And it should fit pretty well. Oops. If it doesn't want to sit flat inside like mine does, adjust your creases a little, like pull them in or push them out or whatever you need to do to make this sit neatly inside of here. And mine looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put glue on both of these wings, not where the strings are. Now, if you want, if you're worried about these strings coming undone, you could put a little glue there and let it dry ahead of time. But you don't want to glue that spine string area to the spine of the cover, or else it's going to make the cover too stiff. So I'm going to just put the glue on the two wings, not the area with the strings. Make sure it is right side up. Make sure my cover is right side up. And then this will insert right into the center. It'll line up top and bottom. And then I'm going to gently tap those wings in place. And then I'm going to kind of open and close a couple of times and check and see what it is doing. So I want to kind of go back and forth, snug it into place, and then open it up and make sure it's opening okay. There's a little bit of back and forth that happens here just to make sure it's going to lay nicely when it opens, but then it's still going to be correct. Now this is going to pop up just a little bit, not too much. This isn't a very thick or hefty book. So, but you might see a little buckling right here. That's normal. That's why we don't glue there. That's a little bit of give so that your pages, your book will sit nicely whenever it's closed. So play with that a little bit until you get it to move nicely. And then I like to firm up these creases on either side. And you can see that is sitting closed pretty nicely for me. And then we want to make sure this is good and dry before moving on to the next step, because playing with this could shift it around. Once these are dry, we are going to put in our cover inside cover panels. We have these two. I'm going to put this one in the front and this one in the back. And this is where we're going to insert strings if you want to insert some strings. So for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue all over this panel. And then I'm going to put glue right kind of in this middle area where my string is going to go. I'm just going to stick my string in that glue a good ways. I want to be able to make sure I can put some tension on that if I want to tie it. And this is where the Fabri-Tac comes in handy, because it's going to glue really well to this non-paper material. And then just center this up as best I can. I want it just inside here. I don't want it to go over that crease, so double check there. You should have plenty of room to work with. Made sure to size these nicely for you. And then just going to press this down really well with my bone folder. And then let's flip to the back and repeat that. So good coating of glue here, and then here. And I'm going to put some extra glue under here because it looks like I didn't get a good seal right there. Went a little too quickly. Now I'm going to grab my string, put that in my glue, make sure everything is nice and flat, and then put this one in position. Give that a good press. And now I have a book that can be tied shut. I'm going to let this dry really well before I try to tie it. I might shorten these up. I'm not sure. It depends on how I tie it. So now you can flip through, and I've pre-chosen some portraits. So the headmistress is the only one that I gave a first name to. Her name is Elira. I think I want to use her as a character in an upcoming journal kit, so we'll see. But all of the others I left a little more ambiguous so that you could decide more who they are and not be tied down with a first name. So I just gave them a last name, but Headmistress Elira, this is what I've chosen for mine. And then the rest are very open. I just went professor last name so that you can decide who does what. And I think this would be a good choice for our spellcasting teacher. Oops. and so on. So you're going to fill each of these little portrait slots with one of the pictures. So you can decide who you want to staff your school. Now go ahead and finish mine up. You may want these to dry a little bit in between. Let's see, wand making, sure. I just went through and picked my favorite portraits and decided I would figure out who was who later. There we go. And finally, astronomy and astrology. So now we have professors for each of our 4 core classes. And that's it for the staff compendium. So now our school needs some students. So we're going to create the Brightwand Student Registry. There are 10 pages for the registry. You're going to have 2 that need to go on cardstock. That's the 2 with these panels on them. 4 of them will need to go on paper, and that is the 4 with these pieces on them. And then there are 4 more full of portraits that you can do on your choice of paper or cardstock. This is just like the staff photos where think about what you might do with the extras and choose accordingly. It doesn't matter which you choose for this project. So here are 2 uncut pages, and then I've cut the other 2 and picked out some portraits for my student registry. I also used vintage photo distress ink around all of the edges. I think some of the green, the bundled sage would look nice on this book, but I just stuck with the vintage photo just to keep it simple. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the paper pages. Those are the ones I printed on 32-pound paper. And let me open this one up for you. These are pretty simple to put together. We're just going to fold them in half and then glue the back sides together so that we have a double-sided page. A glue stick will work really well for this. I'm using my Fabri-Tac because I like it. My reminder I do every project. Use the glue you like. I like this one a lot. It doesn't seem to buckle and it dries really quickly, but sometimes it doesn't get all the way to the edge, or it can be messy when I'm trying to get to the edge. So everything has upsides and downsides. So I'm just going to smooth that out really nicely. I'm going to let this dry. So repeat this for all 4 pages. Once it's dry, you're going to go ahead and fold right on this line here in both directions. So just give it one back and forth. You don't need to break it in a whole bunch. This is kind of one of those clamped together side books, and it should page through pretty nicely no matter how broken in this is. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. So go ahead, get all 4 of those pages done. Get those inked and get these creased and then put them off to the side. Next, we're going to work on the front and back covers. So this is going to be similar. It just has a little offset tab so that this isn't too bulky. So we're going to fold in half like so, and then glue the panels together. So I'm going to just get glue around the edge. Give that a fold and smooth my glue out. And then I'm going to repeat that for this second one. This one has the school logo. It goes on the back of the book. And this one I inked to the interior. You can see the folds a lot better on this one. Give that a smooth. And then I'm going to go ahead, and there are a couple of little panels that go on the insides of the covers. So the front cover has the Brightwand Academy Student Registry. That is the card that's going to attach to it. So I'm going to put those 2 together. And then the closing note from the Office of Academic Records is going to go with the back cover. And I'm just going to center those up. I'm going to try to glue to the edges. And then make sure it's right side up. There we go. So right side up, right side up. Center that on the panel. And then I'm going to repeat that for this second one. right like so. And then once these are nice and dry, I'm going to go ahead and fold this tab over to make this little hinge here. Once you have these all finished and they've had a little bit of time to dry, we're going to start assembling the book. So I'm going to grab my pages first. And these all have a year on them. We've got first year students, second year, third year, and fourth year. So you're going to want to make sure you put those in order for second, third, fourth. And then you want the hinge to be to the left-hand side. I'm going to start with fourth year, grab my glue, and I'm just going to glue right on this tab. And you don't want to put too much. You don't want it to seep out into your book. So I recommend making sure that the layer close to the inside of the book is very thin, so it's not going to squish out. So we've got fourth year. I'm going to put third year on top of that, and I'm going to line this up, top, bottom, and then that left-hand side, and give that a press. If your glue is very slippery, you might want to wait and let this dry just a little bit before adding the next page. And then I'm going to grab second year, put some glue on top of the third year hinge. Just stack that right up. And finally, do the same thing for the first year page. That's going to go on top. I'm going to make sure these are all lined up really as neatly as possible on that left-hand side, top and bottom. The neater these are, the neater the book is going to look. Once these are all together, I'm going to grab the back cover and we're going to glue right on this tab here where the white is. Again, try not to get too much squishy glue. We don't want it to squish out. I'm going to use the tip of my glue bottle to kind of smear it around a little bit so I don't have big blobs. And then this should just line up the same as the pages. Give that a good press. And then we're going to place the front cover right on top. So glue on the first year page. Press that in place. And then one last check to make sure everything is lined up really nicely. And then I'm going to let this dry. You can do kind of like a little page through and make sure you haven't had any glue seep out. I would put some pressure on the spine while you're doing that. And just make sure nothing has come out. I had a little sticking right here. It looks like I was a little sloppy with my glue. I'm just going to rub that till it comes off. And there's the last one that looks pretty good. I'm going to let this dry really well before trying to add the portraits. Now this has had time to dry, I'm going to put my portraits in. I have picked some portraits already. Let's see, I have them in order. And I am going to go through my book and start adding them to these squares. So I tried to, again, provide as many portraits as I could within reason. So you can decide what everybody looks like. And you'll see I have kind of a pattern of a female sounding name and a male sounding name. So you can do with that as you will. Again, I did try to provide quite a variety of portraits. And I'm just going to go through and get these all in. And this is just a fun little inside look at the students, some of the more exceptional students at the Academy. I really like building some backgrounds and some layers to these little place settings. They would be awful empty without people. So it's one thing to build a school, but it's another if it doesn't have any people in it. So So I decided to make this little book that featured a couple of students from each year. Now the back of this book, it is a little stiff. It'll probably break in as you page through it, but that is the nature of this kind of binding. I really wanted to try something a little different. We sew a lot, so I wanted to do kind of this clamped binding look, and I really like how that came out. So there we have it, the Brightwand Student Registry. Let's build the folio for the Herbalism and Potions class. I have all of my pieces cut out here, and I've done all the edges in Vintage Photo Distress ink. There are 14 pages for this folio, and 13 of them have pieces on them, and one is the backer paper. It's this watercolor splotch print. You're going to have to print this on the back of 3 of the pages. The page with this large folio piece on it, the page with these 2 tabs panels, and then the page with this tab panel on it. And that's going to make these all finished on the reverse side because they're going to be showing. You can also print the backer paper on the reverse side of as many of the pages as you want. I've actually done most of mine so that they look finished on the other side. You don't really have to do this. I just chose to when I was printing. If you want to save ink, you can leave them blank. Almost all of these pages are printed on cardstock, but 2 of them are printed on paper. One with these little kind of assignment experiment sheets, and then the other page has these couple of recipes and a little tape strip and a couple of other ephemera pieces on them. So these will be done in paper. Let's go ahead and start by assembling the body of the folio. So I'm going to shift all of my extra pieces out of the way a little bit. And let's go with this main folio body, 2 panels, and I'm going to put this out of the way as well for a moment. So the first thing you're going to need to do is the creases in this main piece. There is a little spine on this, so you need to crease on either side of that. There's a line running on either side of this little vine pattern. And here it is on the inside. So get those creased and give them a fold back and forth a couple of times so they move a little smoothly. Next, I'm going to get these 2 pieces and fold the tabs. There'll be a line along here on both of them. And you can fold those over, give them, again, a couple of folds back and forth just to kind of work them in a bit. Once the creases are made, we're ready to start attaching these to each other. So I'm actually going to start with this piece here. It is going to maybe look slightly confusing front and back. I'm going with this facing up, and the print should just kind of line up along here. We're going to glue the tab down right over top of this main panel. So I'm going to grab my glue. You can use whichever glue you prefer to work with. And I'm just going to run some glue right along that tab. And I'm going to flip this over just because it's a little easier for me to work with, but we're going to attach it to the panel like so. So this is going to line up, and then give that a fold over because this is going to need to close, and rub it, get that pressed down really well. So you're going to have a piece that functions like this. So it kind of closes up. Next, I've got this turned so I'm on the inside. This is the inside, this is the outside. We flip back this way to the inside. And I have this little panel here. So we've got our watercolor print on one side and all of our bottles on the other. This is going to flip bottle side down and then get centered up right along the edge here. And this one is going to be a little sassy to put in just because we're not folding it over the edge. We're placing it on top, and I'll show you what I mean here. So glue along this kind of tan tab. Then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm just going to line up, and you can see where I've got my distress ink, so you can see my crease. I'm just lining this up so that my crease follows the edge of the panel below it. And then I'm going to fold this over and just kind of push it so it comes out to the edge, and make sure that's firmly in place. And that is going to create a little fold up so that this folio folds completely shut with that totally tucked in on the inside. And I am going to fold this back and forth just a little bit just to loosen that up some more because it looked a little stiff. And that is the nice long fold out body of our folio. So I'm going to go back to the outside and let's start adding some things to this. So first, let's go ahead and cover up this tab. I know it's really hard to see on my camera, but the edge of it is there. It does blend in really nicely. And we're going to cover this up using this kind of a wonky pocket. It is going to run right along what will be the back panel of our folio once it's all closed up. So I'm going to grab this pocket and my liquid glue. You're going to need to make thin lines, so I recommend your liquid glue for this. And I'm not doing anything on the top edges. I'm only going to do the left, right, and bottom edges of this. So just a little thin line of glue right along those edges. And then I'm going to place this so that it lines up at the top and the bottom and is kind of centered on the left and right. Now I can fold this up just to make sure I'm not coming out over the edge on either side and that things are nice and lined up. I'm going to give that a good press, open it back up. And then let's move to the right-hand panel. This is going to be the front of our folio. And I'm going to grab 3 pieces. We've got this flap piece, this little pocket with the plants on it, and this taller watercolor panel. This is going to be our main pocket. But before we put this on, we need to attach our flip. This is going to make a little opening pocket on the front of the folio. So I'm going to hook this right over the top, line it up left and right, turn it over, and then glue my tab down on the back. So I'm going to put some glue here. I have a little X here. This is just reminding myself what is the front and the back of the pocket. It really doesn't matter which side you use. Both work. That was just me being a little too much attention to detail. I think it's possible. So ignore my little X. I'm going to have that hooked right over the top so that it has this flip action. And then let's go ahead and glue this pocket down before adding the other one. This is going to line up left, right, and bottom, and we're going to use that thin line of glue all along the edges that don't have our attached tab. So left, right, and bottom. And then I'm just going to pop this on right here. And just like we did before, I'm going to fold this up and check and make sure everything is lining up. So just to check the fit, I am lining up on the left-hand side and making sure everything is nice and even, lining up at the bottom. And then I'm going to check this right-hand side and see if I have any overhang. If you have things kind of sticking out along the side, then you can grab your scissors and just give that a quick little trim. Right, the whole pocket, all of it, the flip, the whole thing, just trim that up. Nobody is going to know. If yours fits perfectly, don't worry about it. But mine was just a little bit off, and I will put a little more distress ink on that to blend it in later on. But for now, I'm going to leave that be. So now we have this little flip, and we need to add a pocket so that it's actually holding something inside. I'm going to grab this pocket piece and we're just going to glue left, right, and bottom again. Nice thin line of glue. And I'm going to pop that right on. And again, line up on the left and the bottom, and then check that right and see if it's overhanging just a little bit. And if it is, give that a little trim. And yours might not have overhang. Mine does. I always go and adjust my digitals when I assemble these. And if I notice, see all of that I had to trim. So I'll go adjust that a little bit. So hopefully when you do it, you won't run into the same problem. And just because it's bothering me, little distress ink right along that edge, inside and out. And now you can't even tell. Now we need a little latch to keep this closed. We're going to use this little flower piece. It's so cute. It doesn't matter which way you turn it. Mine is in this direction, if that helps. And it's going to be used to hold this closed. And all we're going to do is glue along the bottom 2 petals any bottom two petals. And I'm just gonna put a good amount of glue on there. And then it's going to glue right in place here. I'm actually going to open this up because I don't want to accidentally glue my tab inside of the flower and then I can't open it at all. And then I'm going to flip it down and adjust this and then let it dry. Once it's dry, you can slide this right underneath and that is going to hold this closed on the front. So just let that dry before you try to hook it inside. Now I have my pockets in place. I'm going to open this all the way out again and move a couple things out of the way, and let's work on this piece here. So there are some fun little kind of angled strips, and these are the little descriptor pieces that are going to go in there. I'm going to put those to the side, but there are 4 of these little funky mini pockets, and that's exactly what they are. They're mini pockets. They're going to go symmetrically on here like so, and you can put them in any order you like. I am going with this order. I think it's visually pleasing. It kind of alternates the colors a bit, so this is what works for me. You can put yours on any way you like. I encourage you to customize. And I'm just going to grab these, and the glue is only going to go along the left and bottom. We want to leave the top and that little angled cutout open so it's easy to slide our little pieces in and out. And I'm going to make sure that I am far enough to the left. So I've got, oh, I don't know, like 1/4 of an inch there to the left. It's fairly centered, but I have just a little extra room here. And that's in case these are going to tuck in. And that leaves a little room for them to kind of poke out on that side. So it'll look more centered whenever all the pieces are together. So it doesn't have to be exactly the way that I do mine, but I'm a little meticulous. So if you'd like to be as obsessive compulsive about it as I am, feel free to follow along. So now I've got one in place and I can use that one to place the other 3. So glue on one side, bottom, and then pop that into place. One last one. And there we go. And we want to let these dry really well before tucking those little pieces in because we don't want to glue them into their pockets. All right, one last panel. This one is going to have a couple of fun things on it. So I'm going to grab this little tape strip. I've got this piece cut out of paper. I'm going to grab one of my recipes. It doesn't matter which one. Let's go with the calm leaf drop. And there is one more. Let me see if I can find it. And I was wrong. There is not one more. So there we go. We've got these 3 pieces. And these are going to be kind of free form so that you can lift them up and kind of rifle through them and see everything. That's why they're printed on the back side, just so that when you lift them up, they're not blank, but also not a big deal if you didn't. And I'm just going to glue the corners on these. So I'm going to take and glue that top left corner. Just going to give it a little smudge of glue. I'm going to center this up and press it in place. Same thing for my recipe, that upper left corner. And I'm going to line those up, not exactly, but I have it just a little bit lower and inside that first one. And then I restrained myself. This is the only piece of tape in this project. You can just tear the ends off wherever you like. And this is going to look like it's securing, but it's not really. It's just going to run across here. So make sure you've got it torn short enough so whenever you glue it on top, and I should let this dry a little before I mess with this too much, but it's going to look like a little piece of tape holding that in place. You can ink the ends of it if you want to just to kind of finish it off. I'm going to leave mine kind of raw with that white and pop that in place. And now I'm going to leave all of this to dry before I flip it over and work on the other side. All right, everything here is nice and dry. I'm going to tuck that right into my flower tab and flip the whole thing over. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab a couple of pieces here. We've got a couple of greenhouse pockets that are going to go on either side here. Let me center this back up. And then there are a couple of smaller pockets as well. I'm just going to sit these right off here. And let's start with these small pockets. So this one here with the flowers, and then you can see there's kind of a brick floor at the bottom there. That one is going to glue onto the far left-hand side. So I'm just going to glue 3 sides, top, left, and bottom with my liquid glue. I'm going to place that all the way to the left, and I'm going to line that up on the top, bottom, and the left side. And that's going to make a tuck pocket. And then let's repeat that for the other one. This is going over to hide the tab here where this small panel connects. So this is going to glue right over that. And this one has kind of a tan edge. There's a big pink flower on it. And I'm going to glue the top, bottom, and right-hand side on that. And when I say left and right, I mean the side when it's in place, not the side when you've flipped it over. Just to clarify. So I'm going to put that in place. I am going to push it to the right, but I want to make sure that this piece can fold over. So you don't want that to get bound up. So you want to make sure this hinge is free enough for you to make that fold. Now I'm going to grab these 2 little pockets, and these are going to go right over top of both of these and make a cute little pocket that we're going to put some things into. Now it doesn't matter where you put each one. You could do this. You can also do this. I like mine like this, so that's how I'm going to put them on. And we're going to glue the left, right, and bottom on these. You could even turn them upside down if you want to. So they could be like this, but I like them like this. I'll just pop that one on there and repeat that for the second one. Right, like so. Now let's work on this center panel. It's looking a little bit lonely. I've got a bunch of things up here. So we've got this larger bookcase piece, and then I've got a smaller tabbed pocket. It looks like this, and this little strip that says assignments. So let's start with the larger pocket. This is going to stay open at the top. And we're going to place this down a little on the panel. So we want to leave some room for something to go inside and kind of peek out at the top. So I'm probably going to put it all the way down like so. Oops. So I'm just going to glue left, right, and bottom. And put that in right about there. And then I'm going to grab this pocket piece. There are 3 tabs. You need to fold all the tabs in. They'll look like this on the back. I like to do the sides in first and then the bottom up. This makes it so it's a little easier to tuck things down inside. If you have it the other way around, sometimes they'll catch on this lip a little more. So sides, then bottom. And then I'm just going to get some glue on all of these tabs. Not too much. We don't want to accidentally glue our pocket shut. Let me get that down and kind of stick that bottom tab into the glue a bit, and then I'll glue the bottom. And then this is going to line up with the very bottom of the bookcase, like so. And finally, we have our assignments strip. That's going to go right along that pocket. You can use a glue stick for this if you like. Just going to stick with my liquid glue. That is what is in my hands. So there we go. So now we've got these pockets in place. I got a little extra glue there. And now let's slide all the way down and work on this little panel here. So we've got a couple of funky pieces here. These are going to be doors on a cabinet. So I'm going to actually move this whole thing out of the way and show you these panels. These each need to be folded right down the middle and along here. The order to fold this makes more sense if you fold here, fold this under, and then fold to meet that. You want to be able to fold this over and then firm up that crease so everything is nice and flat. That way you're not going to end up with anything binding up. So on the second one, you're going to fold this under, like so, to the back, fold this in, meet up with that corner, fold this over, and then firm up that crease so you don't really have any buckling along here. I do recommend using some extra heavy distress ink if you're using that right along there, because this is actually going to fold back this way to create a hinge for our door. So you might see a little of this edge. So if you're using distress ink, I would put quite a bit along here and even up onto this surface along the tab, just to hide that so there's no white peeking out. So once you have those folded, a glue stick might work a little better here. I'm going to go with my liquid glue. We're gluing the larger panels back to back, these floral doors, right like this. I'm going to grab my bone folder so I can smush that glue out a bit. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. So it's just the larger panels. And then we're going to bring these over. This one is going to go on the left and this one on the right. Bring my folio back over. And they're going to attach like this. So this tab attaches down and then the door is going to close over it. So let's do this one first on the left, because we need to make sure it's going to close properly. I'm just going to glue all along this tab. Going to sit it right on here. It's not all the way into the crease because this whole thing needs to fold over. So this is going to fold over this way. I'm going to slide towards the crease and then fold this whole thing over to make sure it's going to close, because this is supposed to fold all the way up. And you can see I had some glue seep out. I'm going to rub that right off. And there's the first door. You can see I have a little bit of stuff poking through here. I could use paint or a marker or something like that later on to kind of make that disappear, or I might just leave it be. Once everything's in, it probably won't bother me very much. And let's put the other door on the same way. So this is going to attach here on this side, right like this. I'm just going to glue as neatly as possible. I'm having trouble hitting what I'm aiming for. And I'm just going to line this right up along this edge. See if I can get that a little better. There we go. Could not get it to slide. So I've pushed all the way to the edge. And now I have a pair of doors. If your doors want to pop open, you can just firm up those creases, but it's going to fold over. Everything's going to be folded over. So that will help keep those closed once everything is finished up. So make sure you don't have any glue seeping everywhere and that everything is lined up nicely. And let's work on the inside of this cabinet. Our cabinet is going to hold a bunch of bottles, and it has two little shelves, approved preparations and unstable or incomplete. And these little shelves are going to go about like this. Let's start with the bottom one for unstable or incomplete. And we're going to put this in just like a pocket. We're going to glue the sides and then just a little bit of glue along the bottom. And I'm just going to pop that in right like this so that those little tacks along the side catch the floral tabs that we just put in. And then this is even along the bottom. And then these little bottles are going to tuck into the pockets. So we want this other pocket to kind of sit so that there is plenty of room for the bottles to go in. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball this up. I don't want to stick them inside because I could glue my bottles on the inside. And I'm going to go about there. It's kind of in the center. It's okay if the bottom bottles overlap with this shelf just a little bit. but you don't want them to stick out of the top. Though if they did, it's not the end of the world. They should still be contained. You have a little bit of wiggle room, but they'll still be contained. So there's a little forgiveness in this. So right about there. And then these bottles can sit inside of here like so. So you can kind of check that fit one more time. And I'm seeing I could move this up just a little and it should be okay. So I'm going to slide it. And then I'm going to use my fingers to remove any extra glue. This Fabri-Tac will roll up a little bit. And then I'm going to leave this all to dry before we start trying to put all of our ephemera inside. We don't want to glue anything into our pockets. So I'm going to start putting things on the outside. I am going to fold this all the way up like so. And let's start with the very front. I'm going to grab, there is an herbalism and potion making kind of catalog description of the class. There's a picture of the greenhouse annex and then this fun kind of grass vine specimen, funky looking plant. And then I'm going to grab my other recipe. And I'm just going to pop this flap open. And I'm going to put my cards here right inside. This one, probably going to have to go like this. Let's see, will it fit this way? No. So we're going to go like that and then put our recipe inside and then close that back up. And then our class description is going to slide in here at the top and we want it to peek out. We want it to be clear what this is about. Well, let's go ahead and flip this over. And let's grab this little piece of paper. It's a student practical evaluation. And I left some room where you could maybe get a pen and check the check boxes on how the student went. There are some notes on there already, but I thought it would be fun if you wanted to check what they maybe did and did not do. That is going to slide right down in here. If you have trouble sliding it in, grab like your scissors or a bone folder or something and just give this like a little lift just to make it all relax a bit. And then hopefully this will all slide down inside. There we go, right down in there. Then I also have another copy of our cabinet here, and I've got this research tab. So there's the tab. I'm just going to fold that in half and then glue it right to the top of this card for a little texture. So let's give that a little glue, not too much. I'm just going to pinch the research tab over the top. Wipe off any excess glue. You can let this dry off to the side a bit. I'm just going to center that up as best I can. And then once it's dry, I'm going to tuck it right inside of there. Let's go ahead and flip this open, and we have our 4 little plant shelves here. And there are 4 little strips that go inside of those. The weird stock, the remedies, the lumen bed, and the bramble. And you can decide which of these are which. I feel the lumen bed is this kind of glowy plants. So I'm going to pop that in there. The remedies, I feel like could be either of these. I think I'll go with the top one. The weird stock is clearly going to be the weirdo plants down here at the bottom. And then the bramble is everything else. So I'm going to tuck that there. So now you've got little descriptions of the different plant areas of the greenhouse. This one is already done. So we are back to the inside. And let's go ahead and grab these little bookmark pieces. There are 4 of them, and you can mix them any way you like. It doesn't matter. And we're going to put 2 into each of these little side pockets. So slide right in there like that. You can kind of make them a little jaunty so they're spread out a bit, or you can line them up nice and neat. So I've got both of those. There we go. And we have a couple of seals, and we need to glue these on. I'm going to put the flower on this side and the potion on the other side. These are just going to decorate our pockets a bit. Oh, my glue is getting sassy. I'm just going to place one seal on one and one seal on the other. There we go. Here we have a description of the classroom, and I'm going to tuck that into this pocket, as well as a plant and then a little chalkboard that has today's kind of assignment or focus on it. So all of these are going to tuck in here. However you like, they can go whatever's visually pleasing for you. And then let's hop back over to this one. And I'm going to grab these three pieces. So we've got some potion bottles, another plant, and another plant, lots of plants. It is a greenhouse. It's a potion making and cultivating class in a greenhouse. Tuck those in like so. And I actually had a tab. I forgot to add to this one. So we have a tab that says room 2B. And I'm going to attach this one just like we did the other one right to the top like so. So let's get my glue. And I'll just pinch that right over the top. And then you may like to let this dry before you put it back inside. I'm going to live a little dangerously, probably glue things together or shift them the wrong way, but there we go. So we've got those together. Now let's work on the middle. We have two file folders for our assignments. We have on time and late. So there's two little file folders. These are just going to fold right in half. And then we've got all these little assignments that I've put together, diagrams and notes from the students, just things that they've worked on. You can split these up however you like. You can decide what was late and what was on time. And then I'm going to take these two folders, stack them up. On time can actually go either way. So that's up to you. I like mine that way. And we're going to stuff these down into the assignments pocket. There we go. And then right behind that, we've got this fun plant. It's going to go in just to add a little more interest. And then we have a schedule. Let me move this up out of the way with another tab that says schedule. So kind of self-explanatory there. And I'm just going to glue that on. And I know my potion bottles are all higgledy-piggledy here. Just going to slide that in right there. And again, if this is tight, if you're having trouble getting that in there, grab a bone folder or scissors and just give this a little loosen. And then see if that will help get things in there a little better. And it does. So I'm going to slide that all the way in. So it's just peeking out. And then let's go to our potion cabinet. And you can put your potions in any way you like. I like kind of 4 bottles per shelf. And again, you can decide who's successful, who's not. I have left the labels blank in case you'd like to write on them or give them letters or numbers or any way to indicate which students maybe did what. But I left a little room for personalization for you. There we go. And then we can close our cabinet doors. Again, if this is being a little sassy, you can kind of crease it into place. But then this will be held shut once you fold it up. Fold here. We're going to fold right over. And there is our Herbalism and Potion Making class folio, all completed. At Brightwand Academy, astrology and astronomy go hand in hand. We're going to build a folio that doubles as a box for a deck of 12 cards. The cards each feature a different imaginary constellation and tells you a little bit about each one. There are 12 pages for this project. 11 of them are printed on cardstock and 1 is printed on paper. The page that needs to be printed on paper has this long assignment sheet on it and a couple of other ephemera pieces. There is a backer paper for this project and it only needs to be printed on 2 pages. So the back side of the 2 pages that have the pieces for our folio box. So this one and these pieces here. So when you see these pieces, check the instructions on the page and make sure that you print that backer paper on the other side. I am using vintage photo distress ink on this one. I think that doing the cards with different colors might be fun. I'll let you have a sneak peek of those right here. They're very tan, but there's a lot of vibrancy on the outside and the inside of this box. So you might decide to stick with a vintage photo, but if you want to add some color in, this would be a great place to do so with your distress ink. I am also using a quarter rounding punch on the medium setting. I'm just doing that on my cards to round the corners, but that's optional. So I'm going to get started by moving everything out of the way except for these pieces. I've got the main body of the box, two pieces of flips with tabs on them, and this tower piece. For this larger piece, you're going to need to crease right along these two lines. We're going to make a little spine here. That's going to allow our cards to fit inside of our box. You're going to repeat that for this smaller side. So there are two creases, one on either side of here. And then these two pieces both have tabs, but you're going to end up with that same formation, that little, there we go, that little spine kind of shape on both of these. So crease there and there on either side of this star strip, like so. Once you have these all creased and inked, if you want to, we're going to start putting this together. So I'm going to show you from the back side that our tabs are going to connect at the two blank edges. One, the short one, is going to attach at the top, and then the longer one is going to attach on the side. So I'm going to start with the shorter one. I'm going to flip over to the yellow printed part, and I'm going to put glue on just the tab. Good coating of glue. And then I'm going to flip this over and place this right underneath. And then fold it up. This is only ever going to fold up at a 90-degree angle. It does not need to fold all the way over in this area. So you don't need to check the crease like we usually do. Just make sure it's lined up and that you can stand that up at a 90-degree angle. You can go just a little further if you want to make sure that this is on square and neatly. And then press that into place. We're going to repeat that for this one. So some glue on the tab only, not in the spine or on the panel. And I'm going to tuck that right under this long side. And again, 90-degree angle, just kind of stand it up a little, maybe go a little past that so you can pull and make sure that this is straight, everything is lined up. Check and make sure that the top and bottom are lined up. Mine could come down just a little bit. And then I'm going to check this again. And you do not need to fold that all the way over, just kind of 90 degrees. So now you have something that looks like this. And we're going to cover those tabs up with our picture of our tower. And you can use a glue stick for this. I'm just going to use my Fabri-Tac really quickly. I recommend gluing all the way to the edges on this because this is the back panel of your box. So this could get caught on something later on if it's not glued down well. I'll just grab my bone folder and smooth that glue out underneath. And then I'm going to fold this up. So the way this folds is right, left, bottom, top. And it's going to be a little floppy right now because we're just getting started. And then I'm going to use my fingers to feel and make sure that this is lined up nicely. And that feels pretty good. And I can open this right back up. Next, I have a bunch of little pieces here, and we're going to start with some pockets. So let me kind of lay these out here. So there is a center pocket, one for the left and one for the right, and then there's some other pieces here. We will get to those in a minute. But let's go ahead and get started with these three pockets. I'm just going to glue on the outside and the bottom. I am not going to glue this short piece or the angle. And I'm going to get as thin of a line as I can, as close to the edge as I can. So this is for the left-hand side. If you're cutting by hand, I know there's a lot of kind of curved corners on this piece. You can just use your scissors and trim up if things aren't lining up nicely. Glue them together, let it dry, and then give that a little trim, and then put some distress ink on it if you want, and that'll help clean it up and give a more finished look. So I'm going to repeat that for the right-hand side. Just that thin line of glue. And then tuck this right into the right corner. Now for this center pocket, we're only going to glue left, right, and bottom, and we're not gluing up on the curve. So I'm going to stop right about here with my glue on both sides, because I don't want to accidentally come up and around and make this pocket more narrow than it needs to be. And again, thin line of glue, right, left, and bottom. Those curved corners are up towards the top. And then I'm going to line this up at the bottom and in between my folds here. And then I can just kind of stand that up and make sure that everything is in place. You can even stand it up and then push on your pocket a little to butt it down against the edge a bit. That's going to go like so. I'm going to slide this up and let's work on this bottom flap. So I have this observation tower card that is going to glue right down here. It's a decorative element. So I'm just going to glue the whole back side of it and place it right about there. And then there's these two funky little pieces. If you are cutting by hand, again, just do your best with them. These are just to kind of add a little bit of stiffness to these corners so that they hold up a little better. And then there's a nice little element there whenever you open it up. And this is definitely probably more of a glue stick piece with this kind of thin point. And then again, once you place it on, if things aren't quite lining up, just trim it with your scissors and put a little ink on it, and that'll clean it right up for you. Now I'm going to slide this down and go to the top. And this other corner is going to go right up in here. Since I have that in my hand already, I'll go ahead and attach it. And there is a flat side and kind of a fun curved side on this, and the flat side is what goes out if you're having a little trouble lining those up. And then here I have all these kind of paperwork pieces. Make sure I have it the right way around. There we go. So that is right side up, and we're going to glue that right here. Next, I am going to flip in my right-hand flap. That's the one with the stars on it. And we have a description of our tower as it is on campus. And I'm just going to glue that description right onto the panel. So I'm just going to do a scribble of glue here. And put that in place. And then I'm just going to kind of flip it over and give that a rub. All right. And on the inside, I have a couple of decorative elements to go on the pocket. I've pulled some of the images from the card, and these are images from some of our constellation cards. And again, I'm going to glue these all the way down. Because this is a box and it's meant to hold the cards pretty tightly, I don't recommend making a lot of changes on the inside of this. Like if you wanted to make this a pocket to put something else inside of here and get creative, you absolutely can. But then once all these cards go in and it closes up, it might not fit quite as nicely. So keep that in mind if you're making some changes to this with some creativity. Now you could leave these panels off and add something else on if you want to make it your own. That would work. All right, there's our decorative panels. And I'm going to let these pockets dry really, really well before adding my ephemera. So there are a few ephemera pieces. I've got a telescope and this cool early astronomy tool. And I'm going to pop those right into the pockets, one on each side. And then there are 2 cards with some diagrams and sayings on them. I'm going to place one on either side as well. And then there are 3, which is an odd number, I know, of little assignment papers. That's what fit on the page that they're on. I wanted to take up the rest of the space on there. So I kind of included these as a bonus, and you can just place those in also. And make sure everything is staying within the boundaries, that they're not encroaching on these little spine spaces, because when this folds up, they'll get caught. In the center, I'm just going to take my assignment sheet and fold it in half and slide that right down into the center pocket. And if it's a little too tight, you can always grab your bone folder or your scissors and kind of open that up a little bit. There we go. You just need it to get far enough down that it's not coming up into this fold up here. And that's the entire box. So next we're going to do our cards, and then I will do the closure, but I'd like to do the closure with the cards inside of the box. So the cards are really simple, and there are 12 cards. So I've done all of mine except for one, the Weeping Heart. These are just fold over cards. There's 2 per page. You're just going to fold these right in half. And then I like to use my punch before I put the glue in. And I just went around and did the punch. You do not have to round the corners on these. I didn't want you to have to cut them by hand if you are somebody that cuts by hand. So I left them square to make it easier, since there are just so many of these. So, and then once the corners are rounded or not rounded, your choice, you just glue the back sides together. And I'm going to smooth my glue out. And now I have my last card of my pile. I'm going to bring this back over. And I will need to ink that corner. You can see how white that is. If you want to know, why do you use distress ink? That's why, right there. It sticks out like a sore thumb. So I'm just going to place that in there. Right, left, bottom, top, and we've got this nice little packet now. And we can put our closure on. So the closure is our usual little strap with a tuck to put it inside. So I'm going to glue the backs of my straps together to make it double-sided. And this, again, might be a nice glue stick application. Just line those up with each other. And then this is going to attach to the top flap. And we want it to kind of land right about there. So a little space between the center of this design and the top of the strap. And then you want to have a little space at the bottom. So I'm just going to kind of grab this with my thumb right below that sun. And I'm going to put some glue here. I'm going to open this up so that I don't accidentally glue it to itself. And then I'm going to gently check this and make sure it's straight. And it looks pretty straight. I don't mind that. So I'm going to let this dry, make sure there's no glue coming out of the back side here. Let it dry. Once it's dry, make sure everything is put together nice and tight, that your box sides are pushed all the way in. And then get this little strip. We're going to place that here so that it can tuck down inside. We're just going to glue on the ends. So right there, and right there. Push down. And then I'm going to slide this out and let this dry. And then once it's dry, the little tab should pop right down inside of there. If you're having trouble getting it to go, you can just put your scissors or something in there and just very gently loosen that up so that it's easier to slide the tab in and out. And now we have our box holding our cards. And that is it for astrology and astronomy. So let's head off to Wandmaking Class. We're going to build a little box that doubles as a desk. The top will open up to reveal a pop-up desk, and the drawer is full of goodies. There are 9 pages for this project. 7 are printed on cardstock and 2 are printed on paper. The pages that need to be printed on paper have the wand making checklist and then the diagrams. And also the second page will have the 3 strips needed to make our mini book. There are no backer papers in this project, but if you'd like to print the backside of the wand making checklist, you can use any paper from this kit to do so. I used a mix of the vintage photo distress ink as well as the bundled sage distress oxide on the edges of everything here. I kind of picked what I felt like worked best for each piece. So I've got green on the assembly checklist and brown on the little diagrams. So just go with your heart and distress these however you would like. So let's go ahead and start by building the box. I'm going to move some of these extra pieces out of the way. There's a lot of pieces for this. I didn't have them all laid out here, but we're going to start with these 3 main pieces. We've got this kind of lid piece. There is a part of the box here and then another part of the box here. And this is going to be a little bit fun. So I'm going to go slowly. It's a slightly different construction than you'll be used to from me, but it made a sturdy box with a nice finished front edge. So there were no raw paper edges on the front of the box where the drawer goes in. And I'm pretty happy with how the construction came out. So I'm going to start with this piece here, and we're going to have to cut a couple of things by hand. So I'm going to grab my scissors, and you can see there's kind of a fine light line right here. We're going to cut that out. We're going to kind of trim it out. So I'm going to go on one side of it, and it is very thin. So if you want to just do just a cut and leave it at that, you can. But by trimming out this little sliver of paper, you're going to get a slightly better fit on the inside of the box. If you don't trim it out, it is not a big deal. It will still work, and you probably won't even notice the difference. This is just me being a little picky. So I'm just going to kind of take this little, you can see how skinny that is, just a little thread out. And I pop that out. I have a little bit left on there, so I'm going to clean that up. Go in this way. And this is only cutting up through the green part. We're not cutting into the cream. So I'm just going to trim that out. And then repeat that for this second one. So I'm going to trim on one side of that. And I know there's a little bit of fussier pieces and cuts in this one. I think this might be the most complex piece in this entire project kit. But I'm also very pleased with how it came out. And I'm excited to build this with you guys. So I've just got my little sliver here, and I'm just going to pull that out. So for folding, this is going to fold in half and then open it back up. Again, you can fold these individually if you like. Just line everything up square. And then we're going to fold over like so. So those are the folds. And then we're going to turn it this way and put it to the side. That piece is ready to go. Next, let's go ahead and grab this funky little guy. There are just pretty self-explanatory, some little tabs around the edges. You're going to fold here, here, and here. So you're going to have, this will be the back of the box. This will be the bottom of the box. This will be the inside of the box. Here's what that looks like from the inside. And then all these tabs are also going to be folded. So once you have all of your pieces folded, you don't really have to do distress ink on the inside of this. I did ink all of the creases just to make these show up better for you on camera and make it a little easier on the eyes. So once you get these all folded, we're going to fold this dark panel in. So here's what this side, all the light on one side, the dark on the other, and we're going to glue this down. So I'm just going to use my Fabri-Tac. You can use your glue stick. You can see I put a little note to myself first. I'm trying to keep all of the assembly straight on this one. I think I assembled 3 different prototype boxes before I was happy with how it all came out. So I'm just got that glued down. So we have that. We're going to put this off to the side with our other piece. And let's grab our top. The top is going to fold here where it says shelves flip tab. So you're going to have one crease here. And then this is going to fold fully in the middle. This here is not a tab. So there's no angled sides on it, not a tab. Don't fold there. If you do fold there, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So if you pre-folded and you're like, oh no, I folded there, doesn't matter. So we're just going to glue this together. So fold your tab in, fold this over, and then this is one of our pieces that we need to check your fold. Make sure this folds all the way over and this is not buckling. So everything should be nice and flat. If you fold over and this pops up, just kind of push it all and then use a bone folder or your thumb or the back of your scissors and give that a push. Once you're happy with how everything is laying, we're going to glue this panel down. So just like the other one. I'll put a little scribble of glue. Make sure you glue your stuff all the way to the edges. Do as I say, not as I do. I glue very quickly in these tutorials. I'll smooth that all out. And let's bring all 3 pieces back. So we have this piece with the wand making Praxis Hall, and the top of our desk. Now this is a little fun and funky, so I did put a little kind of line here that match, just so you know which edges go with which edges. So these 2 go together, these 2 go together. So I've got the shelves flip tab and insert shelves flip tab along this edge. We want the white sides up. So we're just going to have them right like this. We're going to glue this on top of here. Make sure we line it up. And then we're going to glue this one on top of here. So this is probably the trickiest part of this entire project. It's a little unconventional, but it is worth it. So let's start with this one. I'm going to take this piece, put it off to the side, rotate around, and I'm going to put glue all along this white tab. Then I'm going to grab this piece. I'm going to place it so that the lines where these creases are match up with the edges of this flipping panel. I'm going to fold this over. I'm going to check and make sure that these little edges fold down like so. And then I'm going to press down where my glue is. So now we have a little hinge that's going to be for the top of our desk. Now I'm going to repeat that for this side. White side up. I'm going to turn this, so my dark green, and if you have any doubts, flip it over. There's that symbol on the back of the tab. Matches that symbol there. Little line, little dash. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to glue this right on top. So glue just on my tab, not on this panel here. And you can flip these little arms out of the way if you need to. You can fold them under. So all you have is this. They're going to fold under eventually anyway. And then I'm just going to line up my edges with these creases here. And I'm going to fold over. So it's nice and flat, and I'm going to double check, is everything, I need to pull mine over just a little bit. So I might have prematurely pressed on my glue. So I'm going to pop that right back up. I'm going to flip up my little side tabs. And then I'm going to press this down again. The neater you get all of these pieces, the nicer your box is going to be. So just keep that in mind. So now we have something that looks like this. It's a little bit crazy. So now let's flip it over. And we've got these two panels here. So I'm gonna fold this under and fold this under. So we have our tab pieces. We've got this top, this bottom, and these here. We want to glue these two together. We do not want to glue this or this. We are just going tab to tab with the glue. And we're going to glue these two surfaces together. They're going to fold in so that it makes this kind of a shape. So we're just gluing the large ones. And I'm trying to go nice and slow because this is a little different. So I'm going starting at the top, the corner, down, and then I'm just making a big, it's not quite a square, just these two large rectangles. And then keeping everything out of the way, I'm just going to fold that over and give it a smush. So now I have something that looks kind of like this, and this will become a box, I promise you. just stick with me here. So this is actually the top. This is going to be our desktop with our pop-up. Flip that over. And we're going to start rolling this up to create the box. So let's flip these two tabs in. I'm going to put glue on the colored side of the tabs. And then I'm going to lift it up, lift up these little sides, and press those little tabs to these small side sections so that you are forming corners here. So you're going to have to kind of, there's nothing to catch on here. Going to have to look at it and make sure it's straight and firm that glue up on both sides. So I'm just going to pull this in and make sure I have a nice straight line here for my corner. So now you have something that looks like this. Now going to press in these longer tabs. We're going to put glue again on the printed side, the colored side. There's one and two. And then this is going to come down and we're going to press our sides right into those tabs. And again, you'll want to line this up so that you have a straight line. And if you're having trouble, just push your thumb inside and use that to create pressure to get the tab to stick to the inside of the box. So you have something that looks like this. So here's the top, our flip, and we've got these two little wings. I'm actually going to stand mine up on end and press right inside here with my bone folder. You can use a ruler or a pencil or something like that just to get some extra pressure on those. And then I'm going to double check my corners. Those look really nice. And now I'm ready to flip these guys in. They are going to be glued down. So let me pop those back out. And what we're going to do is put glue right on the flap. And this is where if you didn't trim out that extra little kind of sliver, this might be a little tighter, and that's okay. You're just going to press, 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 press until you get it to kind of behave itself. Again, it's the inside of the box. I'm going to use my bone folder. You can use your scissors if you need to, very carefully. Don't punch a hole in the corner just to get all the way in there. And now that has hidden our tabs on that side. And we're going to repeat that for this other side. I've gotten mine kind of stuck in there. There we go. So repeat that for the other one. See, I told you it would make a box. Spent a lot of time designing this one, trying to make it do everything I wanted it to do. and have this nice finished front. So you didn't have any raw edges. Next, I'm going to grab this little piece, and I just made this cute decorative little piece. It doesn't matter which way you put it, this way or this way. It is going to glue down inside to cover the back. So when you take the drawer out and you look inside, it will be finished. So I think I'll go this way with mine, and I'm just going to kind of put it in, go all the way to one end, and then drop it, and then poke it with something until it lays flat. And just do the best you can with that. That's a little tricky of a space to get into. And you can see there is a little bit of white around the edges. I don't think that's too big of a deal. It's going to be in the dark, really. So now we have something that looks like this. Now we have the box done. Let's go ahead and make the drawer. So we've got a couple of pieces for the drawer. We have this big one. It does not quite fit on camera. It is quite large. So we have this big one. You will need to cut this hole out. So you can choose your scissors. I happen to have a hole punch that was about the right size. This one might be a 3/4 inch round. I'm not sure. But any rounded punch can kind of get in there and punch it out. I just folded it in half, and then I slid this open so I could see where I was cutting. And I punched that right out. But you can always poke a hole with your scissors, or you can hold it like this. You can kind of move things out of the way and cut that way. So do what you need to do to get that little hole cut out. I would not make it any wider than it is, because there is a little strap that's going to come down and it hides that hole. So if you cut your hole wider than it is, then this little strap might not quite hide the hole. So we've got this. You're going to want to fold along. There's some light lines here. So you're going to fold here and here, and then along here and here, here and here, and there and there. This is a little more like our regular box construction. We've got our tabs on the sides. And I'm going to start by gluing these in, these short sides. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to put some glue on here and on here, just on the rectangle, not on the tabs, and just fold those over. And again, I inked all of my creases so that you could see. I put extra ink along here because the bottom of the box is going to pop inside, and I wanted to kind of hide any white that might poke through, because when you pull the drawer out and take everything out, you will see this. This is much more visible. I'll just smooth these down. And again, our basic box construction, I am going to glue all over this long panel. I'm going to be careful around the hole. You do want to try to get some thin glue around the hole so that it's not coming apart whenever you use the drawer, but not so much that it's just going out everywhere. And then I'm coming up, and where the tabs will hit on the ends, I'm putting glue on the second panel. Then I'm going to stand up these small ends. I'm going to push my tabs in and then stand this one up like so and fold over. Then I'm going to look at my corners. I'm going to push, 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 make sure that tab is all the way in before squeezing and securing it in place. Same on this side. Push, get a nice corner, and secure. And then I'm going to use my bone folder. You can use your fingers and just press all of that down nice and neat. And I'm going to repeat that for the second side. So I'm going to put the glue all over one surface, and then on the other, glue where the tabs go. Fold in my tabs. Stand this up, and then fold it over my tabs. Check my corners, push everything in where it needs to go. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Same thing on the last one. Get that corner in, squeeze, and then give it a good smush. Now we have a little tray, a drawer that looks like this. So we just have to put the bottom in. I'm just going to scribble some glue under here. You could put glue stick on the back of this panel and then put it in if you prefer a glue stick. If you're using a liquid glue, you might want to just scribble it down in there and then put the bottom of the drawer in. And I'm just gonna give that a press all the way around. So now let's check and see and make sure our drawer fits in the box. Mine fits very nicely. So now I want to work on the pop-up mechanism that we're going to place on the top. There are 2 different strips here. We're going to start with the big one. And then I know this one is little. I know the text is small. I promise you it's worth it. This one's going to be a little fiddly, but we'll do it second. So we'll do the big one first. And then once you have the idea down, this one should be a little easier to handle. So I creased this along each of these lines. So 1, 2, 3. And I went back and forth a couple of times to kind of break my cardstock in because we want this to move well. This is going to be a part of our pop-up mechanism. So fold all of those. And then we're going to turn it into a little box. So I'm just going to fold it so that you have this little square shape, like so. Not sure how to make it show up on camera, but there you go. Nice little square shape. So to hold this, if you want, is not necessary. You can get a little Scotch tape or a little washi tape and tape this. So let me I've got some tape here I use for things you aren't going to see. And I just got a little piece and I'll tape here and right on here to make a corner. And that's just going to hold it together a little bit to make it easier for me to work with. So I've made this little bit of a square. So glue bottom, glue back, and then this is the bottom. So the cream part is up. The green part is facing forward. We're going to put glue on the 2 sides that say glue on them. So I'm going to grab my glue. I'm going to try not to make too much of a mess. I'm going to glue along here and then glue along here. And I want the one that says back to face the back and the one that says bottom to go on the bottom. And I'm going to try to tip this a little funny. You want this to nestle with the glue panels right into this corner. I'm going to stand this up and I will show you another direction. It's a little hard to get it in here. So you want it to look like this. This little cube, this little square piece is going to nestle right into the corner. And then you want to center that up. It should hit end to end. And then I'm going to go down and I might actually take the drawer out and stick my hand inside so I can press all along there to really get that glue locked in. And then when you open and close that, you can see it has function now. So now that we've done this one, let's go ahead and repeat that for the itty bitty one. So again, fold, fold, fold. So we've got all our folds. We're going to make it into a cube. And I'll grab some clear tape this time. And I'm just going to tape right between where it says glue back and glue bottom. I know that print is very small. The cream one says glue bottom and the green one says glue back. And I'm just going to trim my tape. So that's going to tack it into place. And I'm going to turn it so that the back is to the back and the bottom is to the bottom. And this is going to insert all the way to the right and line up on the right side. So we have kind of a second tier of shelving here. So I'm going to grab my glue and put it on my glue panel. So on where it says glue back and glue bottom, just a little bit of glue. And then ever so gently, I'm going to line that up on the right and push that right into that corner. And then I'm going to make sure everything is kind of squaring up, just like so. Same thing, I'm going to fold this in and give that a good press. Open it up, make sure everything looks like it's lined up pretty well, and adjust anything I need to. But that gives us, there's a side view. You've got a couple of shelves there now. So now we're ready to fill those up. We've got a few pieces. We have this rack of wands, this little fussy cut of containers. Just cut these out, this one in the bottles. Do the best you can with them. I understand they are a little extra fussy. I did use a brother scanning cut to cut my things out, so I got pretty decent cuts on these. But if you need to cheat a little, you can always put some ink on the top or something like that just to kind of make it blend in. So let's start with the wand rack, and I'm going to put some glue. I'm going to turn this right along between our little shelf and the edge. So this is upside down right now, and I'm going to put my glue along there, not too much. Let me turn this right side up again. So this is on the left-hand side, and I'm just going to glue this wand rack to the front of the larger pop-up. So press that into place. Make sure you don't have a bunch of glue going everywhere. And then again, stick your hand inside, give that a press, open it up, and then check and make sure you don't have glue seeping out everywhere. Now I'm going to grab the bottles. Let's tip this up, and that's going to go up high. So let me see how close I can get to the camera. So we're going to glue along here for this one. So just a little line of glue right along there, and I'm going to stick my bottles in the glue. I'll line them up pretty much to the right side, and then again fold that down and give that a little press. Open it back up. Look for glue seepage. Make sure that you don't have anything coming out. Scrape it off if you do. And then the last one, all our little containers, I'm going to glue right along the front here. And I'm going to push those right down to the desktop. And make sure they're not sticking out of the side. And one final press. And then we're going to open this and leave it open until it's good and dry. That way we don't accidentally glue this shut, because that would be sad. So let's go ahead and put this to the side, and then we'll start working on some of the pieces for the drawer. So the first thing I'm going to start with is this little tray. And we do have a book we're going to make, and the book tells all about wand making. And for this wand making process, you charge your wands in the light of the sun or the moon. So we are making a little wand charging tray. And of course, it is property of the school, and if found, you need to return it where it came from. So here is another little box. It's going to be very similar to what we did to make the drawer. But I want you to make sure these are cut all the way, these tabs, because they do kind of touch a little because everything is so small. So make sure that between the tabs and these short sides, that these are snipped all the way into the corner, just between the tab and the short side. Otherwise, your corners will not be nice and sharp. So you want to check those and make sure you're getting a nice fold and everything is nice and neat there. And I'm going to start with the long sides, and we're going to go ahead and glue these down. Again, I have inked a little extra heavy around here because a bottom does go into the tray. So you want to make sure that the white isn't peeking through, especially with that dark green bottom. So there we go. So along the long side, I'm just gluing this down flat. And I'm going to repeat that for the second long side. There we go. And then I'm going to fold my tabs in. And the same thing that we did on our drawer. Oh, that is popping up on me a little bit. There we go. Straighten it out. All right, same thing we did on the drawer. So I'm going to glue, and because these are smaller, it might be easier to just put a bunch of glue on both pieces instead of trying to be exact, but you glue one and then the ends of the other. Stand these up so that the tabs are in. Stand up that short edge and fold over. You might need to kind of touch the tabs to the back panel first. Mine's being a little bit sassy. And then push your corners in. Oops, there we go. This is smaller and it is a little more touchy. I think this is one of the most little detailed projects I've done, if not ever, then in a while. I really wanted to bring this setting to life and give it a lot of little nuances. So hopefully you'll have to let me know how you feel about pieces that are small and fiddly like this. I'm just doing the same thing on the other side. Putting my glue and then folding over. So yeah, let me know how you feel about some of these smaller, fiddlier constructions. And I also have little small fussy cuts and things. We went just a little detailed on this box. But I had so many fun little things I wanted to do, and then it all has to fit, not only on the pages, but also into the final project box. All right, so here's our tray. Looks like this. This is the bottom of the tray that's going to pop inside there. And it looks like I didn't put any ink on this, so I'm just going to do mine real quick just for me. I might have neglected to do the tray as well, but that's all right for tutorial purposes. And then this is just going to slide down in here. So again, you can use a glue stick on this panel, or you can stick some liquid glue down in there and then just pop that down in. And push it in on all corners. So now we have a little tray that looks like this. So now we've got this little card here, and we're going to need, I recommend getting a piece of string. I'm just using a piece of embroidery floss. You can use anything you like. You could use a section of wider ribbon because we're going to make a pull string. So the string is going to get sandwiched right in between your two layers and glued in place. And then this pull string will allow you to pop this bottom out and flip it over. So whenever you want to charge your different wands, you can do so. So I'm going to put glue on the inside. This is just folded in half right along the line. So just right along there. And I'm going to put some glue, and then I'm going to put a little swizzle of glue on the other side since I've got this embroidery floss. And I'm going to lay this down. If I had a little more glue, it'd probably behave a little better. I'm going to lay that down. And then close this. And that wasn't really in the center. Let's try again. Try to center yours up. Mine's going to be center-ish. There we go. It's not too bad. And then I'm just going to squish this down. So be as fancy as you like with this little pull tab. You can, if you have a little snippet of something special, some kind of ribbon or fabric or thread or string or anything, that is what you can use for your pull tab. You just want it to be something that's not so bulky that this is going to be kind of gaping open along the side. You want it to be something that will squish relatively flat. And then this will just pop right down into the tray. And then you can lift it out and flip it over and change that from the moon to the sun. And let's just go ahead and stick our tray right down into our drawer. And I'll just kind of slide that to the side. And next I'm going to grab, and I have mine all over here, I have all these little wand cutouts. These are, I'm going to call these optional because they are very, very fiddly. Wands are long and skinny. If you want to cut all these out and you have to do it by hand, you can't do it on a machine, I recommend cutting out both pieces. There's a front and a back for each one. Cut out the bottom and then cut out the top. Line those up and then glue them together and then cut out the middle after they're dried. And that'll give you the best result. Again, I did mine on a cutting machine, so they look pretty good. And I'm going to place my wands in here. And here's one I haven't glued. They just match up the two that go together. And we're just going to put a little glue on there and glue them together. So now we have some wands to put in our charging tray. I had a lot of fun coming up with how wands were going to be made at my little school. I wanted to do something a little different. Instead of copying what certain wizarding schools may or may not do with their wands. So there is my fourth wand. So now we just have 4 wands down there in the tray. And let's go ahead and assemble our miniature book. So you have 3 different strips here. And we're going to start with the strip that says, "What is a wand?" on it. So it looks like this. And the first thing I'd like you to do is fold that in half with the printed side together. After you've folded it printed side together, open it back up, fold in to the line. So you're going to take the end little page and fold it into the line on the next page. Do that on both ends so that you have something that looks like this. Then flip it over and you're going to have a line down the middle from where you folded it in half. You're just going to fold in and meet that line. That is the easiest way to fold these pages so that everything comes out even and it's zigzagging in the right way. So fold it in half, picture side together, open it back up. Each end folds in one page, turn it over, and then fold each end in to the middle crease. And then that should turn into this little accordion piece that looks like that. Repeat that for the other 2. And then we're going to put these in order. So let's start with, what is a wand? We're going to put that over here on the left. We're going to then do the stones or gemstones. That is our second one. And then the last one, it's going to end with storage and care. So this is our last strip. So that one's going to go on the right. So I'm going to start with these. I'm going to fold them up, make sure they're right side up. And then the back page here is going to get some glue. A glue stick would work great on here. If you put enough glue stick on, I found you can slide these around a bit. I'm going to grab the first page of my next strip and I'm going to glue it right together as neatly as I can. And then accordion that in and make sure that it looks fairly straight. So now I have an even longer zigzag, this little page here in the middle. Make sure it's right side up. Fold it all the way in. Last page, going to get glue just like the previous one. And then we're going to grab our last strip, and this one with this kind of shiny wand is going to go right on top. Like so. And then line that up as best you can, accordion in, and then make sure that things are pretty square or as square as you can get them. And you'll have something that looks like this. Now you can see we've got these glued together, but we need to glue all the rest of them together. So I'm going to turn this over. Let's see, let's work from the back page. If you're a lefty, it might work well to do the other way. That's fine. We're not gluing this end panel, but then we're going to glue the next two together. And I think maybe I did this in a different order when I did the mini books. If you've crafted the mini books with me before, I think maybe I did this part before gluing them all together. But you can see those are going together. And then we've got the next two. So we've got our free end that's going to attach to the book. And then we're just going to keep attaching these so that we start to have something that looks like that. And keep going all the way down the line. So our end is free. Glue the next two. And the next two. All the way until you hit the other end, and you should be left. This is very quick. I'd glue them a little better than I did. You should be left with something that looks like this. So it'll be two little wings on the ends, nice and free. Everything else is glued to its partner so that you now have a book. So I'm going to put this off to the side and let's grab our cover. And we probably should have done this first so that it could dry, but that's okay. So our cover, here we go. We've got the outside of the book and the inside of the book. I've got it creased here, and I've also creased along the spine here and here. And then I've inked those just for visibility. You do not need to ink any of that. So this is going to fold in half, and we're going to glue these back sides together. Like so. Then I recommend letting this dry pretty well before you move on to the next step. But once this is dry, you're going to reaffirm those creases for the spine, like so that you have a book shape. So now you've created this kind of a shape. You may find that you've got a little white strip along the edge now, because whenever you fold all that, it kind of does things. So if you let it dry, you'll probably have a little less of one than I do. I'm just going to trim it off with my scissors. Like so. I've got my little book shape. I'm going to grab my book, open this back up, and my pages are going to glue down. So I've got my two little wing pages. They're just going to glue right down to either side with the rest of the pages along that spine. We are not gluing in the spine area. We are only gluing on this surface and this surface. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I am using my liquid glue so I can slip slide things around a little bit. If you make your book too tight, it doesn't want to open and close nicely. It could just spring open a whole bunch. It'll give you some problems. So there's my glue. I'm going to put this in and then kind of curl it around my book and then give it a press on either side. Then open it back up. Make sure that we're centered top to bottom. I'm a little crooked. You want to center that up as best you can. So just move back and forth between looking at it this way and then checking the location of each of these this way. Open it up, see if it'll stay flat. That looks pretty good. Fold it up. So once you've gone back and forth a couple times, you can firm that up. You might want to make yours a little centered just a little better than mine. I'm going to push those in a bit. So just play with it back and forth until you have something that open closes nicely. And these are glued down to either side and centered up. There we go. And then I like to give this a little wiggle back and forth. So hopefully it'll stay shut pretty well. If you find that your book does not want to stay shut, get a little pretty piece of ribbon or something like that and tie around it. That way it's not popping up and causing problems. And once you are finished, that can join our growing collection inside of our drawer. So before we go any further, I missed my little drawings here. These are just little sketches, student drawings, and I've got a pile of these, and they can either go in here, and that's where I think I'm going to put mine because I like it, or they can go under the tray. So that's just a little bonus item that can slide inside of there. Next, we're going to put together this Matchbox style box. So it has a wrap that goes around the outside. There are some little flat spools, and we'll get to those in a minute. So this is a lot like the tray that we put together. You want to make sure that the tabs are cut all the way in. They're attached to the short side, and then you want to make sure they're cut all the way into the corner against that long side. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this tray. The ones with the tabs, we are just going to glue, and the folds on these are the same. So you've got 4 folds that go around the edge here, and then 4 folds for each of these panels, and then all the tabs. So this is identical to the other one that we put together. So on these short sides, we're going to glue it to itself, like so. And then we want to do these long sides. Glue, and I didn't ink these so you could see the creases really well, and I apologize, but hopefully since we've done this assembly a couple of times, this isn't so bad. Tabs in, just flip that over the top, and then check those corners. And then I'm going to repeat that on the other side. Make sure the glue everywhere the tabs are going to be, tabs in, up and over, check your corners, make sure they're nice and tight. All right, and then we have the bottom of the box. It's just going to slide right in here. So I'm going to grab my glue, scribble some glue down in there, and then just pop this in. Like so. So now we have this cute little tray. And now let's make the wrap. So this is going to fold along all of these lines so that it comes around and makes a rectangle. So here above the cover graphic, this is the side, this is the back, and then this is the other side. And I'm going to glue where it says glue. Just going to stick some glue along there. And then we're going to press these together. And you want to make sure that it's even with the top here. So if you need to, you could put it on the table and kind of tap down. And then I'm going to slide this in and check the fits. There we go. So your little matchbook style slide is going to come in and out of the cover there. And this is a box of wand binding twine samples for students. It is student grade. So we've got these little bobbins here. Now each of these has a front and a back. And again, just like our wands, we're going to glue these back to back. So find the matching ones. I probably put way too much glue on there. I'm just going to kind of smudge some of that off. And then I'll put the matching back on. And I just gave these cute, fantastical names, and they are all ready for you to wrap some string around. So you can use embroidery floss, you can use specialty string, you can use anything that you might have on hand, ribbon, pick something and wrap it around. So for example, I have some red or burgundy and orange embroidery thread here. And I've got a couple ends. And for flame twist, I'm going to take a length. I'm going to leave a tail long enough for me to comfortably tie a knot. And then I'm going to kind of twist these together because it wouldn't be flame twist if they weren't twisted. I'm going to start this in the middle. So right across the middle. I'm going to kind of twist this and then I'm going to crisscross back and forth over this a few times. And you can fill these up as much as you want. It's up to you. It depends on what you have on hand. I'm going to kind of go back and forth over. So I have this kind of loose tail coming out at the center. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to cut and leave enough again to tie a knot. So I've got that one. And I'm just going to tie a knot. So this is just embroidery floss. It's nothing special. Let's cut these ends a little bit so they're not quite so wild. And then that's our first little sample in the box. And then I can repeat that for my moon thread and my vine wrap. Maybe greens and blues, something like that. But those will get filled up and then placed in my box. You can also, if you want to get clever, you can, there's plenty of room in here. So if you have some kind of specialty fibers, like I have this pretty ladder thread, this would be really fun for the moon thread. So I can just kind of do the same thing and wrap it around here. I think I might just go ahead and do that since I have it out. Or if you have some of that furry kind of fun fur or eyelash yarn or those kinds of things, I'll have to see what I might have for green. But you can wrap as much as you want and make this as bulky as you want. There, so I've got that one all wrapped and tied, and I'll pop that in, and I will figure out what I'm going to do with the other one here. I'm sure I'll do a little video overlay and show you what I did with that last one. But that is everything in our box, and then our box is going to go right into this space here inside of our drawer. So we are just about done. We just have a couple of things left. First, we have this little note. I thought this note would be fun to tuck inside of the book or just lay down into the box. So you can put that in wherever you like. And then we have this long wand assembly checklist. And this is going to roll up. I'm going to start at the bottom. And I'm going to do my little trick where I run it right down the edge of the desk. You can't really see, but so that gets me kind of a curl started. And that is just going to kind of roll up. And I probably should have made my little wrap for this first, but so I'm going to roll it up, and then that way wand assembly checklist is on the outside. Same thing with this piece, edge of the desk. And then I'm going to wrap this and glue it to itself right over that kind of peachy yellow spot. And I'm seeing I need to shorten this. Yours will be shortened already. So I'm going to trim this. You should not need to trim this. I'm going to trim that for you in the digital. And I'm going to put some glue on here, and then I'm going to roll this and stick it so that I'm making a cylinder, a tube, and I'm covering up that peachy gold area. And I have something that looks like this. I'll put my scissors in there and kind of give it a nice curve and use that to put pressure on both sides. So I've got my tube, let that dry. And then I'm going to roll this up really well and pop this into our little wrap. This is just like our orientation packet, but you just need to make sure that this is small enough that it's going to fit inside of there. I had to make sure it was going to fit in the drawer. So you might need to roll it a couple times and get it small enough to fit into that wrapper. So I'll give it another go here. There we go. And then let it kind of pop open. And that is going to sit right on top. And if your book, again, if your book is popping open, then you can tie it shut with some string. And then this whole thing, because that book is going to push your scroll up so you can't put your drawer down, but and then all that is going to go in there. This should be nice and dry, so that'll be able to fold down. And let's add our latch. So we've got this little strap, and I'm just going to turn this over and glue this onto the back. So that will give us a finished back side. I'm going to glue on the little piece so I don't over glue. And then just stick these together. Match those points up. Oops. There we go. And then let that dry just a little bit. Once it's dry, you're going to fold down right along that line. So I'm going to give that a fold. And we're going to attach it to the top of our box. And I've left you a white spot so you can see where to put the glue, so you can center this up a little easier instead of making you eyeball the center of this. So I'm just going to pop that on right there. And then there are two different ways. So push this so that it kind of hooks on there. And there are two different ways to seal this up. How I'm going to do it is use a Velcro dot on this little tab and then put a Velcro dot here. But I've also included, if you don't have a Velcro dot, I've included this little strip. And that way you can make a little tuck in. And this is my prototype. Bear with me here. It's gotten jammed down in there. All right. So you have the little top here, and it's going to slide down in here. And to apply that, you're going to put glue on either end. And then you're going to close your box and then place this on top just to make sure you've got it centered up. Use that strap and then get that strap out of the way so that you can let the glue dry here. So basically you're just centering this up, gluing the ends down and leaving this center free so that this can tuck in and out. So that is the no Velcro dot low supply option that I provided. And I'm going to use a Velcro dot. It has a clear side and a white side. And I'm going to place the clear side on the drawer because you see that a little more than you see the inside of the strap. And I'm going to place the dot white side down here. I'm going to close, fold down, and then just press that to the front and give that a good stick. And then I have my Velcro dot in place to hold this closed. So your choice of closure on that. I love the Velcro dots. I highly recommend them. They'll be listed in the supply list in the description down below. So that's it for our little wand making class desk. I think it's so incredibly cute. It's got the little pop-up. It's got a drawer full of goodies. And I think we're ready to move on to the next project. All right, it is finally time to go to Spellcasting class. This is Spellcasting 101, and all of the pieces in this are printed on cardstock. There are 8 pages and 1 backer paper. The backer paper is going to go on the back side of this sheet with these little panels on it, and this sheet with the big purple swirly block on it. So the back side of these both get this really pretty backer paper put on them. I do also want to note that there are 4 pages of pieces. Each one has a little label. We've got protection, connection, expression, and influence. Try to keep the pieces for each of these sheets together. There are a couple little rogue pieces slipped in with them. There's a tab and this card. You can pull these out and put them to the side. But try to keep little piles for each page so that you know what goes together. I will go over all the pieces in detail as we put them in. So if they get mixed up, don't worry, I'll help you. But if you keep them in separate piles, it's going to be a little easier later. I did use vintage photo distress ink on the edges of everything. I will say that I would have liked to use something else on here, but because I don't like to throw too many supplies at you, I went ahead with the vintage photo. I think a dark purple would have been really, really nice, or a dark gray, something like that. So if you have a different color ink, this is a great place to experiment, is on this piece right here. So for now, I'm going to take my little piles and put them off to the side, out of the way, so that we can start building the main folio. I'm going to pull this all in and open this up. So this main piece is just going to fold in half. There will be a dark line, but it is the tall way. Just fold it over on itself, tall ways, not long ways, if that makes sense. So if you don't see that line, just line up those corners, fold it in half. That one is pretty easy. And there's not really a front and back to this. We're going to cover all of this up with other things. So let's go ahead, fold it in half, pick a side to be the front, and put that down in front of you. So I'd like to work on the exterior of this first. I'm going to go ahead and grab my Fabri-Tac. You can use the glue of your choice. And let's grab Spellcasting 101. This piece, this is my fold up here so that this opens upward like this. This is going to go on the front, very close to the top of this. We're going to glue this all down except for this area right here underneath this gem, because we're going to make a closure that kind of slips underneath of here to keep it shut. So we want this to be able to lift right here so that we can pop this tab inside. So glue on the whole back, but not in this gemstone area. If you need to, you can just stick your thumb in there. And then glue everywhere else. So that whole kind of crescent there is free still. I'm going to go around my edges here, swoosh in the middle. And you can always sneak a little more glue under there, but you can see I almost have a whole oval shape here free of glue. And I'm just going to hold on to that. This is the crease. And I'm going to place this almost entirely to the top. I'm going to leave just a little sliver so that it doesn't catch or hang over or anything like that. And I'm going to smooth this down with my bone folder, open it up, and then just see if anything is sticking out. And I don't see anything sticking out here. My cuts and everything were pretty good. But if you do have some overhang, just go ahead and trim that off from the back side. So now let's work on the latch. You've got this kind of funky piece here and then another crescent. And we're going to glue this crescent to the back side so that it's finished on the other side. So I'm just going to glue the back of this. And then we're going to want to try and get this as straight as possible. So take a look at the front, and we do have a line across here. And I'm going to use that as a visual. I'm going to kind of peek around the corner here and see that my piece is kind of following that line. Then I'm going to let this dry, and once it's dry, I'm going to fold it all the way over right along there. So now I have this piece that looks like this. It has a little hinge, and I'm going to pop a little distress ink along here really quickly just to hide that line, make it a little more visually appealing. So I'm going to take this piece, it's already folded over. I'm going to go to the back of this, and I'm going to just kind of fit this over. And you can see what's going to happen is this is going to pop right underneath. We want to center that up. So I'm going to kind of play with this until it is centered. And then I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to glue this flap down. So I'll just make a little rectangle there and give that a rub. And then I'm going to flip it back and make sure that I'm happy with this placement. I can kind of slide that around if I want, but that looks pretty good. So now I've got, let's see if I can make it go here. You might need to give this a little bend, but that is going to be our latch for this. So this will pop in and out. I'm going to flip this over, opens up, and there's a shelf full of goodies here. This is going to hide that piece of the latch. We're just going to center this up and glue it entirely down. It's good to glue all the way to the edge. This is on the outside. You know how I mentioned things can catch. I'm going to try to center that up and smooth it down. So now the outside is looking like this. And if you're having trouble getting this latch to work, you might need to take your scissors and go underneath and kind of pop a little bit out if necessary. But I wanted to make sure that this is going to close pretty tightly, because once there's some things inside of here, it's going to have a little bit of pressure on it. So let's go ahead and go to the inside. So we have our front, and we're just going to flip that up so that it is this way. And we're going to grab these two panels. So we've got these little book kind of strips on the side. This is printed front and back. Fold it along this book detail. You're just going to fold right along here and go back and forth once or twice, because these are going to be little flips that open up. And we are going to glue these down so that they are right up against the right and left on either side. And it doesn't matter which one is on top or on the bottom. So I'm going to start with the one on the left, and I'm going to glue the strip only, this tab only. And I'm going to take this, here's my latch to the left, and I'm going to butt this right up against that left-hand side and then center it top and bottom. So between the crease here and the bottom. Then I'm going to flip this out of the way. I'll use my thumb or a bone folder to kind of keep it out of the way. And then we're going to glue the other one to the other side to make a second flip. So we'll turn that over. Oops, a little messy there. Latch is to the right, and I'll just center this up and go all the way to the edge. Now you should have something that works like this. Now we don't want this to be entirely bare when we open it up, so I'm going to grab this oval piece showing the inside of the classroom, and I'm going to glue this directly down right here. You can use a glue stick for this. Again, I'm using my Fabri-Tac. Just super quick. And I like that I can slide this around a little bit. I have found if I use a lot of my glue stick, I can slide that around as well. So we're going to smooth that down. I'm going to make sure there's no glue coming out and that it is fairly centered. Now let's slide down, and we have this piece with the big shield, and we're going to make a pocket. So we're only going to glue left, right, and bottom in a thin line, like so. Just a nice thin line, pretty close to the edge. And then we're going to go almost to the crease. If you go all the way in the crease, this won't close very well. Center it left to right. Press your glue down. And then let's close everything up really quick and make sure that that is working. And that is working well. Nothing is caught. And then I'm going to open back up and make sure I don't have any stray glue sticking anything to anything else. Once this is dry and I'm satisfied, I'm going to close this up, and let's start decorating each of these flip panels. And that's where our little piles are going to come into play. I'm still going to sit these two pieces off to the side. Those will go in our pocket in a bit. And I'm going to get the pile that's labeled expression. So the first words, the first step in learning magic is learning how to express it. So this is a pocket. We've got this card round tag with a book. there is just a little scene and then some hand gestures, little sketches of that. So I'm going to go with this first little flip, and there's not really a way for me to open this up and separate this out for you, but we're going to attach this as a pocket right here to the bottom of this flip. So I'm going to turn it left, right, and bottom, thin line of glue. And I'm going to line this up to the right hand side and the bottom. So I'm just going to go all the way to the bottom and then line it up along this right hand side of my flip. There should be a little gap in between your pockets and this little book detail. Now we're going to check our fold. And if you do this and it pushes out a little strip of white, just trim it off. It'll be okay. There's a little bit to spare over there. So if your cut's got a touch off, no big deal. Now I'm going to take expression and I'm just going to glue that right at the top of our flip panel. Like so. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my pieces in. I recommend that maybe you put them to the side and move on to gluing the next pocket and label on, and then put these in, because they could get glued into the pocket. I'm going to gently place mine in. The Fabri-Tac does dry pretty quickly, but that is going to be the expression pocket. And I'm going to go ahead and flip this. And I'm going to grab connection. So connection, magic flows through the world, through people. We've got some crystals. There is a wood sketch, and then this magical sensing log. And this I have folded in half. It won't fit in the pocket unless you fold it in half this way. So same thing, we're going to grab our text and I'm going to glue on 3 sides. Like so. And I'm going to go all the way to the left-hand corner this time. So all the way to the bottom, all the way to the corner. And then flip back and forth, check your fold. If you see that white poking out, then trim it off. Get rid of it. Or you can put some ink on it and move on. That's also an option. It won't hurt anything. It's more of a little details thing. I'm going to take the connection label, put that at the top. And then once your pocket is dry, we're going to fill it with goodies. I'm going to put the little assignment in first. And it is quite large, so it's kind of covering up the word connection. I will shrink this down just a little bit for you so that it fits a touch better and you can see that word at the top. And then my piece of wood and my crystals. And here I have adjusted my own. Yours will be a little smaller, so it's going to fit in there a little better. Let's move on to this next little flip. And how about we do influence? So the pocket is spells are shaped not only by technique, but by emotion. And for the record, this is all entirely made up. This is not an actual spellcasting class. I wish that it were. That would be amazing. I would love to go to this school. All right, so we're lining all the way up with this left-hand corner. There we go. And then influence right here at the top. And then once your pocket glue is entirely dry, we're going to put everything in. We've got Spellcasting 101, Influence Practice Sheet. This is going to fold up so that it will fit in the pocket. And then we have candles and a Venn diagram. And then let's go ahead and flip this open and do our last one, protection. So we've got protection. All students are trained in basic magical safety. And then a shield, barrier charm, and this fun kind of diagram, magical drawing. So we're going to go ahead and add that pocket in. All three sides. And line that all the way up with that right-hand corner. Like so. Get our protection label. Right at the top. And then again, once this is dry, everything can go inside. Our shield and the diagram. Now all we have left is our pocket at the top. So I'm just going to grab my card, and this little tab, the tab will fold in half. We're going to put some glue on it. And then I'm just going to pinch that right over the top. And center it up as best I can. And then once this is dry, it is going to slide right down into this pocket and just peek out over the top, like so. And we can go ahead and close this up. And this is it for Spellcasting 101. Well, I hope you enjoyed crafting your way through Brightwand Academy with me. I was so excited to share this kit with you all, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you enjoyed this box kit, I do have more like this in my shop, so you can check out the description down below for a link to that section. I have Gilded Gear Marketplace, which is a steampunk theme, and Frostbound Forest, which has a story included. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.